Warning, the following podcast contains adult language, themes, and situations. Also, the film we're about to talk about is going to be spoiled thoroughly. Listener discretion is advised. Enjoy this show.
Paul Schrader had Dying of the Light ripped away from him by a greedy studio desperately trying to recoup the $5 million they gave him to make something even moderately coherent. But Paul Schrader would not be denied. 3 years after he, his producer, the DP, and the principal stars staged a silent protest on the sacred walls of Paul's Facebook page, he hired an editor and recut the film using his original first cut, DVDs from dailies, and some scenes gingerly lifted directly from the studio cut to make the film he originally intended audiences to see to the best of his ability. Does the Schrader cut live up to the hype? Does it turn the steaming pile Dying of the Light was into something worth watching? We'll find out as we mercifully reach the end of our Paul Schrader Nicolas Cage odyssey with the unauthorized Dying of the Light director's cut, Dark.
Okay, let's run.
I'm like a prickly pear.
What do you say we cut the chit-chat? A-hole! Porker! How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? Hey, have you ever been dragged to the sidewalk and beat until you pissed blood?
Welcome to One Cage at a Time, the show where we break down every single Nicolas Cage movie, one film at a time. Here are your hosts, Patrick, Vince, and Nigel. All right, it's time to break down the film one scene at a time. Act 1. Why don't we set some shit up?
Our barely counts as a student film begins with a Star Wars-esque scroll accompanied by some spooky Blair Witch Project music for some reason of Paul Schrader's explanation as to why he felt the urge to create this version of the film. He says Dying of the Light was taken from him after the first director's cut, re-edited, scored, and mixed without his input. He offered to revisit the film at his own expense, but was denied by the studio. So he said fuck it and made his own version anyway.
Which, by the way,
I really wonder why they took it away from him. I wonder if that will become clear as we watch this version.
Not at all.
Yeah. He originally he intended for this to be shown at like some film schools. So that's why, like I said, you could watch it at the UCLA Film School and the MoMA. But then it just accidentally found its way to the internet one day on a torrent streaming site called the Riot Stay, something like that.
By not Paul Schrader, by some guy.
Pablo Schraderovich, yeah.
What did you say? Saul
Prater.
Saul Prater.
Saul Prater.
They probably just gave it to one of the film students and was like, hey, throw this up on your internet.
I don't know how the internet works. Could you put this up for me?
There was an editor involved. So the original editor who was credited in the last episode when we talked about Dying of the Light is not the same editor who did this. So this is a completely different cut with a completely different editor. But still, I guess, Schrader was very heavily involved in putting this all together. And
I was surprised by that. I thought he was going to be the sole editor of it.
I did too.
Yeah, me too.
No, it was like
someone at the film school to edit it for him.
Someone, Rodriguez Jr.
Fortunately, he had no access to high-res footage or unmixed sound, but he, quote, used those limitations to his advantage when creating this new film. Grace under pressure, I guess. He reiterates what we talked about in our Dying of the Light quick facts by saying he wanted a more aggressive editing style, color grade, etc., and dark represents the direction he was hoping to go with the film, and that this version is solely for historical record. I don't know why he feels this should be included in the annals of human history, but I guess that's the artist's prerogative.
It's so important that he had to make sure that this version existed.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of get it from one hand, even if a delusional artist is still going to feel some kind of connection to their work and having a studio rip it apart and change it. I have some questions about that, but we'll get to it at the end.
I know if I devoted a year of my life to, putting a film together, I mean, it potentially was a year writing and then a year actually filming and putting things together and editing and all that kind of stuff. And then to have it just completely taken away from you is pretty shitty. That's a
Yeah. So we shit on Paul Schrader a lot, but I do sympathize with him. That would be a pretty crappy situation to be in. Regardless
for sure.
of who you are.
Yeah, me too. It's not fair. You knew what you were getting into when you hired this guy.
exactly.
You should, yeah. Especially
Don't
for
surprise.
$5 million, like that's nothing for a studio. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I don't know if this studio is a small studio, maybe, but $5 million is usually like we said, 20% of that was Nicolas Cage's salary. So
Yeah,
it's basically
it's like
like
it was
you
like a
give them that kind of money
division
and it just-
of Lionsgate. So I would assume that they have a decent chunk of change laying around, but
Yeah.
this definitely did not recoup that $5 million.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it still has not recouped that $5 million,
I don't
even
know.
after 8 years of it being out.
I feel like us watching it for free on YouTube helped.
Yeah, I mean, it had it doesn't show how many views movies have, but it had like 76,000 comments or something. So you got to think there's a decent amount of people who watched it, and if they throw like one ad on there,
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Now that we got that out of the way, let's get to the suck. Just kidding. For all its flaws, due to Schrader's limitations and at least one podcaster's opinion, Patrick, the film flows better, doesn't dwell on unnecessary beats quite like the studio cut, and gives slightly better character motivations and development until the end of Act 3. Which feels like David Lynch raped Oliver Stone, and together they shat out a Nine Inch Nails music video instead of writing an actual ending to the film. Yeah, I agree with all that. It was
Yeah.
it was a better version of the movie, I think, in some respects, until you get to the end.
Yes, I agree 100% with that.
I pointed out a bunch of times in the breakdown of like, okay, well, this scene actually makes the movie actually makes some more sense because it gives character motivation for this and that. So
Yeah.
up until the moment he punches the dude out in the bathroom in the final confrontation, the movie is a better movie.
Yes.
And then, well, we'll get to it.
Instead of opening the film with a flashback to Evan Lake being beaten by Mohammed Banir, this version starts with an MRI image of a brain while a voiceover explains that the brain is that of our protagonist, and though he doesn't know it yet, his brain is dying. Just like ours after enduring 2 solid weeks of talking about dying of the light. Next, we see our hero being introduced to a group of cadets at a CIA boot camp or something, while his hand shakes wildly and he says some numbers out loud. But throughout the film, we never get a clear-cut answer as to what these numbers mean or why he's saying them.
You guys had some theories as to what these numbers were, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's true, but I've heard in the past that they train people during their survival and escape training to repeat either their military ID number, their social number, or their name. Just like repeat those things to keep your mind focused on just being there in the moment. It's repetitive.
And he was a Navy SEAL, right?
No, he was a Marine.
It's a Marine, sorry.
Yeah.
So he had 6 years of Marine training, so he might have had some anti-interrogation or at least I would think through the CIA he would have anti-interrogation techniques.
Yeah, most likely
assume,
through the
yeah.
CIA. I don't think most standard troops get that. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I'll have to-
I think what happens is every time he's repeating those numbers in the movie, he's reliving being tortured. It's just, even though we don't see it in his head, even though the movie does have no problem just showing us what he's seeing in his head at a bunch of different times. I think that's what we're supposed to believe from that. Is
Yeah,
like he's
it's him
reliving
focusing.
the moment and
Yeah.
he's
It's
spewing
just
the
his
numbers
way
out.
of staying focused and not losing it.
Yeah.
Which he also does
Yeah,
in the
that could be it,
final
too. He could
final
just be doing
scene,
that if
but
he's having an episode, he's having just not just remembering his torture, but just having some kind of a dementia moment. He uses the numbers to try and focus himself back
yeah.
to reality.
When I watched Dying of the Light, I figured it was some sort of technique that he learned from the books that he was reading in order to like refocus himself and make sure, because like they tell you if you have an anxiety attack or something like that to focus on one small thing and like what you can hear, what you can see, what you can feel, so that you ground yourself back down.
yeah.
Yeah. But since he's doing this before he knows he got the diagnosis, then it's probably a leftover technique that he has that he's using to deal with it. While being introduced, the film cuts to crazy close-ups of his hands and eyes with some kind of CRT TV filter on them. get used to that, because if there's a signature style to Paul Schrader's more aggressive editing style he wanted to go towards, it's this. I don't know if you guys have theories on why they do this. I think it's a combination of he didn't have access to like maybe better cuts, so he was literally having somebody film the TV closer with like a phone or something to get like close-up shots of it. Or it's supposed to be like we're the CIA watching surveillance of this entire thing. Like the CIA sits and watch monitors of stuff. So that was what I thought immediately, was like it was supposed to kind of simulate that like voyeurism of like the CIA and the NSA just watching everything on the screens and stuff. And it includes parts of this movie or this film, or them always watching the characters throughout this film.
I like that theory better than my theory is he watched Natural Born Killers and U-Turn and just decided that was a cool technique that Oliver Stone did.
I thought,
because as we know, he did the same thing with the Mr. Robot thing in Dog Eat Dog, where he was like, I like the way he framed him, so he just did it in his movie, even though there was no reason to do it.
Right? He used like those quick cuts of like TV screens watching programs and stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, it makes more sense when it's a character watching a TV than when it's the same film you are watching at the moment.
Yeah,
I think Schrader kind of, in a weird way, he was one of the first people who did that kind of weird filming technique, and I think potentially, Oliver Stone and David Lynch and people like that might have actually watched Paul Schrader films and gotten ideas from him originally, and we're just watching him continue to do it not quite as well as those directors did.
Yeah, and it could be due to the limitations of what he had access to.
I think he had a bunch of takes on his DVD, dailies and his original cut and all that kind of stuff, and he just used those to the best of his ability. Even if the audio was terrible, he just uses a close-up of Nic Cage's eyes and just puts the sound from the studio cut underneath it, so the sound is still good.
That makes sense. And it would be like, if I had access to all of everything, I could have made this look better and sound better and not be grainy and CRT-y. But
I would say for all the flaws of this film, like he did do a pretty good cut until the last 5 minutes. But the movie itself is pretty well. It flows nicely. The characters actually seem to have, I don't know, personality and aren't so sterile as they are in the Dying of the Light cut.
He's introduced in this version, the same as the last, former Deputy Station Chief of Beirut, Chief of Station Kabul, holder of the Donovan Award, the Distinguished Intelligence Medal, the only living recipient of the Intelligence Star, the Warrior of the Wasteland, the Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla, Evan Lake. In a much less awkward version of the speech that we were treated to in Dying of the Light, he asks what the hell they're doing here since the CIA fell from the Berlin Wall and all the president's men can't put it back together again, while the fax machine tries to connect to a phone line or something in the background music.
What the hell are you doing here? Haven't you heard? The CIA fell from the Berlin Wall and all the president's men can't put it back together again. It's broke.
It is less awkward, but there's also like it repeats parts, and then it's just holds on like a still shot of him just staring.
It's weird. Less coherent.
I
think it was, you got more of what they were going for in the original cut than this, because it sounds more rambling even though it's shorter. In the speech, we see a black and white flashback of Evan being beaten by everyone's favorite antagonist, Benir, who asks for information while beating Evan with a cricket bat. The cut in this scene is weird and frenetic, with random shots of Evan's lips moving but him not saying anything, close-ups on his face while lines repeat in the background. It feels like late 90s Oliver Stone cut this while having an epileptic fit. Yeah, and that's my main criticism of a lot of this is like, if we hadn't watched Dying of the Light, you wouldn't know what the hell was happening in this scene and a bunch of others. So the flow's better, but I think the overall cohesiveness of the story gets more lost, I think, in places.
It's kind of a shame that, you can't watch them both in a bubble. You have to watch one and then watch the other, and then each one, informs the other one.
The story.
Yeah. So in our head, we're connecting the dots of this film, which I think if you watch this film on its own, I don't know. You'd probably be very confused throughout.
Yeah, that's what I think. Especially the ending, because you really would get no resolution and have no idea what the fuck they're talking about.
I still don't know what the fuck happened.
I don't
I
either.
saw the original film.
Yeah. He says they must be there because you have values. This time, undercut by a shot of Evan getting his ear chopped by Veneer. Instead of cutting there, he tells them not to pay attention to the TV talking heads, the newspaper know-it-alls, the Hollywood idiots, jackass film stars, something you're trying to tell us, Paul, and the biscotte latte layabouts.
Biscotte latte layabouts, they're background noise, chatter.
And I honestly don't know if Nic Cage doesn't know how to pronounce biscotti, if he thinks the character of Evan Lake wouldn't know how to pronounce biscotti, if Paul Schrader doesn't know how to pronounce biscotti and didn't see anything wrong with it. I don't understand how that line made it through multiple people and still made it onto the film, because at first I had to rewind it because I was like, what the fuck did he just say? Like, what? And then maybe he wasn't even trying to say, biscotti. Maybe it was something completely different, and a biscotte is its own thing. But
maybe
that's the best I got is biscotte latte layabouts.
We've seen this in the past with s'mores,
right?
Where he didn't know how to say s'mores.
S'mores.
He doesn't know what s'mores are. He doesn't know what biscottis are. He can't ride a bike.
Didn't he say
There's
like
these weird little quirks of like Nicolas Cage that like you'd think normal people would be able to do, but he can't for some reason.
Doesn't he pronounce
He's lived a charmed
tourist
life.
weird?
Yeah,
Tourist.
he says tourist. And later on, he says like tourist. A tourist bus.
A tourist
Yeah,
bus.
tourist.
Yeah, tourist.
Yeah. So maybe it's supposed to be like Evan mispronounces words sometimes because he's having brain damage. I don't know.
Could be.
Who can tell?
Maybe.
Who knows?
Yeah,
He
it's
does
really
like to
hard
add
to
those
tell
little
in this
things in.
movie.
Also, he's doing kind of a southern accent, so maybe
Is he?
I don't know.
I think
He's doing like a
sometimes got little
military
bit of
thing.
drawl. Yeah. So maybe it's just like that's how Evan would pronounce biscotti because he's not a highfalutin coffee drinking latte man.
He's a man
It's
of
got
the earth.
whiskey in it. Then Nick points oddly at the cadets for a long beat and says those people wish they were them. Finally, we see Evan being tortured and the bad guys being taken out by explosion, and it cuts to black. So if you only saw this cut, I think you'd be very lost at this point. But the speech did feel more meaningful and have 100% more gravitas than the Dying of the Light cut, which it just kind of felt goofy and a weird, bad setup for the character.
Yeah.
It doesn't immediately turn you off from the movie, and it leaves you with more questions than answers, which feels like a good thing when it comes to a CIA thriller.
I feel like the Dying of the Light one, when he does that little turn, it's like the first thing that we see him do in the film, and you're like, oh, this is stupid. So it's like the first feeling you have about the show is like, wow, this is going to be
this
dumb.
one, it's like it sets you up with like a weird feeling of disorientation, which I guess is what he was going for.
That's what he was going for.
So,
obviously, in this
for good or
cut.
bad. Yeah. We see Evan and the guy who introduced him on stage walking together, where Evan asked if the cadets believed a word he said. Apparently, Langley, Virginia is the Old West somewhere because this entire scene takes place with a heavy sepia tone filter over it. Yeah.
There's a lot of that in this cut, too.
Yeah. They did it one scene in Mombasa. There's like the piss filter that they use for Mexico.
I remember
maybe hide the fact that it's a Australian resort and not in Kenya.
We were talking in the Dying of the Light episode about how the DP felt, like he shot it specifically for a certain look, and then the studio came in and made things sickly looking, which I didn't feel that at all in the Dying of the Light one, but this brown filter over everything is just kind of like...
It feels like that. If that's what they intended, then the original cut was more grayed out and devoid of color, and going for a sickly feeling also works for the movie. I think
it was just depressing and sterile. That's how I would describe that cut in general. It's just like I don't have any connection to these people. I don't have any emotional feeling towards these people. It's just sterile, boring, and depressing.
Yeah. I think it's just mid-level studio, like minimum viable product, given what they had and given what we know that they were what Schrader was trying to hand them. Now, an improvement, maybe arguable.
I I still
don't
kind of
envy
wonder.
the studio trying to cut that together into something
Yeah.
that they could release.
I kind of wonder if that version came out and Paul Schrader saw the reaction to the ending that was in the studio cut, and for this one, he just decided to cut that whole final ending out. But that's what he originally intended for his cut too. But
I think
just
so.
different.
Because why else would you film all of it and go through all that trouble of having it?
Unless it was reshoots, maybe. But it
doubt
didn't
it. I
feel
doubt
like
the movie
it.
was going to spend more money on reshoots to go back and do that. I think they would have just scrapped the whole thing if that was the case. So I really felt like there was weird parts where he cut stuff out.
Well,
that was probably as a direct result of the studio cut that he would have not cut out had it not been for that.
Well, it could explain why they only shot people in the shoulders, because the studio's like, look, we got to shoot a fucking ending for this film. It can't just Schrader out as cheap as possible.
Feel like a reshoot ending, so maybe it was.
Shoulder shots only.
And maybe that's specifically why Nic Cage was pissed off about it and was protesting, because he knew that they'd redone what they did for the movie.
Yeah.
So maybe they thought the original ending was poignant enough and didn't realize how it was going to look and feel and, whatever. I guess kind of like what we talked about in the first one. Like, if they just, well, I guess we'll get to it at the end. But if they just ended it at a certain point, it would have made for a better story. And maybe that's what Nic Cage and the other actors thought the ending was going to be until the studio reshot it. And then we also saw what the ending ended up being with this cut.
Yeah, I think if we would have had an extra 2 minutes added on to this one with Evan coming out of the gang hideout or whatever, and then seeing Milton, maybe that could have been the ending, and then we would have... I don't know. We'll get there.
The guy says he has an offer from the private sector, and Evan says he'll miss getting his ear chopped in half, getting beaten by a cricket bat, and getting blown up and stuff. Wait, that's what he misses about this job.
You'll miss it.
This next time around, it doesn't feel quite as disingenuous when he says he wants to come back next year to hear his speech, since it wasn't an awkward as fuck, bizarrely delivered campy mess.
Yeah, this version, the speech had a lot more bearing on the feel of the whole film, because like they keep like talking about his speech later on in Dying of the Light, and it's like, did they see the same speech that we saw? Because that was weird and goofy and awkward. Really didn't set me up to like the character at all.
Yeah. Yep.
We cut to Bucharest, Romania, which isn't the Old West because it has nice, vibrant colors. Inside a car, we see a couple of dudes track a guy they think is up to no good and get spotted immediately, just like in the other cut. But the car chase that consisted of these guys chasing the Kenyan guy slowly for half a block is actually cut like a car chase. Well, a car chase and random close-ups of people's faces shot like they used a closed-circuit camera to film them. It's amazing what you can do with editing. The Kenyans' desperation
they
comes...
like literally just drive through the parking lot of this grocery store, but the way it's cut makes it feel exciting. Whereas the other one, it was just kind of like, they just kind of meander up the hill.
Drive up onto a bridge and then stop. The Kenyans' desperation comes across a lot clearer in this cut and feels more realistic when he decides to jump off the bridge after tossing a USB full of nefarious stuff onto the river below.
I don't know if you noticed this, but in this cut, it was flipped. So it looks like he's throwing the USB into the spot where he jumps into the river. Mm-hmm. But in the other cut, it was like he was throwing it across the bridge towards the police into like a snowbank or something. So this one makes much more sense.
The cops give up the chase, immediately assuming the 12-foot drop into calm waters must have killed the guy.
He's dead.
It's not even that tall of a bridge. You know?
No.
Yeah, I know. I thought that was funny.
Jumping off something like the Golden Gate Bridge would kill you instantly, but this is like, it's like a 20-foot fall into some water.
Yeah.
And he did a swan dive.
People cliff dive all the time, and they're fine.
If I had to rate his dive, I'd give him an 8 out of 10. So he's clearly alive.
They kind of showed it felt like in the other cut they showed him with like blood behind his head when they pulled him out of the river, but in this one it felt like he was just wet when they it was like a wet spot behind his head. So I think the insinuation was that he cracked his head in the other version, but in this version he drowned. Again,
I honestly
amazing
don't
what you can
even
do with a
remember.
color grade.
Hey, he's from Kenya. They don't have any water. How's he going to know how to swim?
Is it Kenya on? Aren't there coastlines? Isn't it on the East Coast of Africa? Anyways, I don't even remember them showing his body after he jumped in either.
I don't think they did.
films.
Did they?
No, they did. Yeah.
I trust Patrick
okay.
because he's watched this way more than we have.
I don't remember it either, but
I don't remember.
It's in
I
the
still
the
remember him
folder.
jumping and.
Oh,
yeah.
That's right. Okay, that's right.
But yeah, there was no subtitles in this cut, so I just remembered him jumping, and then the cops being like, "Call
the divers."
But it's basically like call the divers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
We're not
other
gonna
one
go get that ass.
we got subtitles for almost everything that these two cops were saying back and forth to each other. But in this one, the only thing we got was, he looks Nigerian. Oh wait, no, he's Kenyan. Oh,
Yeah, which I thought was weird.
yeah.
They must have just taken it from the movie. There must have just been a cut.
It's
from the thing, and
lifted
he
directly
couldn't
from the
have-
movie. Yeah.
and he couldn't have he didn't have the software to make subtitles. I
Yeah,
didn't care.
I think he wanted to, and the editor advised him not to put the language that he wanted to use into that scene, describing the gentleman.
Paul Schrader.
Back in Everything Is Brown world, Evan meets with the director of the CIA and asks to be reassigned to the field. And the director says he should take his pension and retire since he has gray hair, so he's obviously an old man. He's not that old. The director of the
like
CIA is
50.
older than him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, he can't do field work anymore and he doesn't want to do desk work, so might as well retire and take his 160,000
Why don't you just get the
a year
hell out of
pension.
here? Yeah, I kind of hate this. Especially in the Dying of the Light cut, they kind of made him seem like such a loser throughout the whole thing. In this one, they don't do that as nearly as much. But in that one, it's just kind of like, oh, well, get the hell out of here. Nobody wants you here anyway. You're weird. And obviously, we introduced him as one of the most highly decorated CIA agents that has ever lived. And everybody just wants him to just kind of retire and go away because now he's useless because he has to work behind a desk or something.
Right. Which is like, why are they having him work behind the desk? That he couldn't he be like a consultant or training other agents or something? You'd think they need something more useful for. I guess he gives speeches at the graduating classes, but
I mean,
you'd think he would be an instructor or something.
to be fair, watching him navigate through this film, I don't think he has a lot of skills that would benefit new recruits.
He can one punch a guy.
Touche.
Still got that going for him.
I got my belt knife.
He's good at sniffing plants and stuff.
And great at awkwardly staring directly at the guy and blowing their cover from 30 feet away.
Is this hat distracting?
I don't want to look too much like a tourist.
I want to fit in here in Romania.
They wear these.
Can I smoke here?
We cut to Evan in his office where we meet his creepy friend Milton, who is slightly less creepy in this cut, but still gives off some real Denny from The Room vibes throughout. He asks how his meeting with the director went, and Evan says, not so good. In this cut, he seems much more even-keeled at this point in the film, far less manic, and kind of feels like a normal person to the point where I expected Schrader to cut the weird dictionary scene. Next, he asked Denny to put a dictionary on his hand so he can tamper it down because there are two kinds of people in this world, men of action and everyone else. We cut to Evan. Also, now that I think about that, like he's kind of insulting Milton too at that point because Milton works the same desk job he does. So either Milton's not a man of
Milton
action.
doesn't have an office. He's got a cubicle, so we know that
Yeah, that's true.
he's not quite as
But
high
he works
up.
in the same office building, so doing the same
floor,
same job. We would assume. Maybe Evan's just the manager or something.
Yeah,
assistant.
But he's
to the regional
CIA middle management. Yeah,
Pretty
assistant
much.
to the director of the CIA.
We need an office style show based around Milton and Evan's relationship.
We cut to Evan driving down the freeway in Brownville where he rubs his head and kind of spaces out for a second before almost running another car off the road. Distracted driving is the same as drunk driving, people. You're driving a 1.5 ton killing machine. Pay attention.
See, it's the same joke, but different.
Should pull up like statistics for distracted driving deaths per year or whatever. Whatever. It's too much work.
Yeah.
He heads to a hospital in Philadelphia where Schrader's cut starts with the same line of dialogue the studio went with, "Fuck," where Evan hears that he has temporal dementia. This version of the scene seems to have much more emotional weight, and you actually feel for Evan, something none of us did up until even during his death in the studio cut. Spoilers. By the way, I get the feeling Schrader was watching a lot of Mr. Robot during this. By the way, I get the feeling Schrader was watching a lot of Mr. Robot during this cut, just like he did during Dog Eat Dog. Frame one side of the other.
It was so badly framed that it was like the doctor's head was half off of the screen during half that shot. Yeah. I mean, it was
maybe it was supposed to be like we're thrown off, just like Evan is.
I think that was what he was going for, which actually makes sense in this scene, not in the scene that he put that style in Dog Eat Dog, which didn't make any sense whatsoever. They're just talking to each other, and he just decided to frame them that way. But in this one, yes,
cool shot.
I like the idea of like throwing off the audience and being like, "Whoa, something weird is going on here." But at the same time, you actually have to like put the actor's face on the screen while they're talking, not just half their face. And it's like, Evan, you're sick. Yeah, it was weird.
The doctor explains that FTD will kill him quickly and that he'll have overreactions, inappropriate reactions, blank spells, mood swings, and unreliable sensory perception. And boy, does he ever have all those things, including the mother of all sensory perception issues later in the film. The doctor tells him to take serotonin inhibitors like Zoloft, Paxil, or antidepressants to treat the symptoms, but Evan says those are drugs for crazy people and manic depressives, and that's not him. We cut to him walking to a door, which is the office of the doctor that he was recommended to go see, but instead he walks away from it and goes down a hallway, and we get a creepy shot of him walking down the hall backwards, blanketed in a thick haze of sepia. Like it was just, he's walking down and then it like fade cuts and he's walking forward but backwards, like they reversed the shot but he's still walking. It was weird.
I think it was, again, to like throw you off, but at the same time, it's like, what in the hell was the point of that?
I don't know.
Like his life is thrown into turmoil.
Or it's like, we don't know if maybe it's supposed to be like he doesn't know if he's walking down that hallway or if he's already done it or if his time senses are all thrown off. I don't know.
I feel like we're giving it too much credit.
It doesn't happen anywhere else in the movie, so it's really weird that it sticks out here. It was just, I think it was just like, it's a cool shot. He's walking down the hallway. We'll just
looks crazy when he's walking backwards, right?
It looks cool.
Yeah. Schrader seems to make a lot of decisions like that, where it's just like, it just feels weird, so I want to put it in because it's weird.
He heads to meet John Rambo, who we see is stick fighting. He heads in to meet John Rambo, who he finds stick fighting in Thailand. Oh, wait, sorry. John Randall. Sure sounded like Rambo there. Weird. Would have been a much different movie. Finds John Rambo in a hospital. Also, this guy he's looking for happens to be in the same hospital that he's in. That's weird.
Coincidence.
It's all right.
Maybe that's why he went to that hospital in the first place, was like, I already have a connection here, so.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
Like,
maybe.
I swear, I watched that scene or that shot like 3 times, and it sounded like he was saying John Rambo, but apparently it's John Randall.
Yeah.
It's one of those, like, you hear what you hear until somebody tells you to hear something else, and you're like, oh, right, that's what it is. John Rambo. Anyway,
I fired a couple
I don't want to
guns.
feel like I misheard it. I don't want to feel like I'm alone. I want other people to hear this. So it sounds just like you say John Rambo.
John Randall.
Imagine a dying CIA agent tracks down John Rambo and they team up to kill Bonnier. How awesome would that be? Be better than the last Rambo movie.
I honestly just kind of had that in the back of my mind the whole time I was watching this cut. Like,
instead of working with Milt, he's got
he's like
Rambo with him.
Just hanging out with Rambo,
It'd be cool just to see Stallone and Nic Cage in a movie.
Yeah. Surprised Nic Cage never showed up in one of those Expendables movies.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he would have been good.
Yeah.
Great.
Anyways, back to this depressing pile of optimism. Evan meets with a friend from the Marine Corps who looks a lot like Evan does when he's meeting Bannier later in the film. You know, slack-jawed, staring off into space, doesn't have a clue where he is, drooling, that kind of stuff. Evan tries to comfort his friend and even sings him the Marine Corps fighting song while trying not to break down. This scene was 100% omitted from the studio cut, which is a shame because it really humanizes Evan and lets you know that he did make some connections along the way that he cares about, instead of painting him as an over-the-hill loser everyone at the agency thinks is a joke. You can see his pain and sadness in the scene, and also we get a better understanding of why he decides to go after Bannier rather than end up a drooling mess like his friend John. We also see a much slower descent into madness in this version of the film, with Evan showing little signs of slipping at a time instead of basically being nuts right from the jump. Yeah, I thought this scene was a lot better, or a lot nicer. I don't know why maybe they omitted it because there's never any other explanation to who that is. I mean, other than, unless you know where the story is going at this point, you don't know that it's like
I don't know that you
foreshadowing
really needed to know who he was, and it's only like a minute long. It only would have added that little bit of time, just would have added so much more emotional weight to Evan's story, because this guy represents Evan. This is where Evan's going.
And yeah, you're right. It does show that he had some friends and connections along the way, and you know, that doesn't always turn out to be turn out in the best. It doesn't always. What I'm trying to say. It doesn't have a happy ending all the time, you know, especially in his line of work. So this kind of shows that.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about Schrader. Are you talking about the Evan's work or Schrader's work? Because Schrader's work never has a happy ending.
It's Evan's work. I will say I do like that about Schrader. I don't think every story needs happy endings, and I actually like when, you know, sometimes when films don't have that because it feels more realistic.
Doggy Dog had a happy ending in it. When Willem Dafoe was getting jerked off by that hooker. Or the masseuse, sorry. There's a happy ending in there. So he does incorporate them sometimes.
And he got a knee job.
This weird stomach.
And his confusingly large penis.
Next, we see an agent in Bucharest trying to read the files on the USB the Kenyan guy tossed before jumping off the bridge. They apparently don't have the technology in Eastern Europe to handle such things, so he uploads it to the NSA cloud or something. I think watching this time, it's supposed to be he's just looking at the files, but because the NSA watches everything, man, like it's all over, man, like it controls everything. Like they just, it flagged him, you know, the file said Desetabine or whatever on it, and that flagged something at the NSA. So that's what that was supposed to be.
What I was wondering, but then, like, I originally actually wrote it that way because I was like, the NSA just intercepted this because this guy, like, tried to pass it off to a colleague or something. But then the guy at the Pentagon says that we were sent this. So.
Oh, who knows? Whatever. The file's something NSA. Yeah, yada, yada.
Intelligence wire.
Milton gets a call from a guy who sounds suspiciously exactly like Milton.
Yes.
Milton?
Yes.
This is Bob Deacon at NSA.
He's talking to himself on the phone. And I almost like, did they just have Anton Yelchin do the lines of the guy calling Anton Yelchin? But no, listen to it. He sounds exactly like himself. He's got a doppelganger or a twin that works at the NSA and calls him. But this guy calls him, tells him they got a hit on a mix of chemicals that he put a request out for 3 years earlier. So he heads to the Pentagon, where the guy tells him they found Islamic sermons and medical reports on the USB. Notice they omitted the porn and the Angry Birds in this cut. So maybe they were trying to distance themselves from the Obama, or not. Maybe they're trying to distance themselves from the Bin Laden connection they were trying to go with. Like a little bit too on the nose. Also, it's just kind of like a joke. Maybe they didn't want to put that in there it's not supposed to be a funny moment.
Yeah.
Evan bones up on his disease while he gets crazy flashes of a road, Evan in a waiting room or something, and flashbacks of being debriefed after his extraction from being beaten by Bannier. He expresses doubt that Bannier died and is told to drop it or lose his job, which he does because this job is everything. Notice they also removed Evan prepping to kill himself from this cut. Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't spin Slick Willy around and then load his gun. So he's
Right.
I guess I feel like this cut in general just makes him pretty normal throughout up to this point, you know, even to the point where he's pretty normal even over in Bucharest. Like he's kind of just an even keeled, like you get that he's actually a normal CIA agent up till the point where he starts to lose his mind a little bit.
Yeah.
Also, though, there's a point in Ruby Tuesdays that they didn't have in the studio cut. Little line that he throws in there that makes you
there's that
see his character a little different way. But we'll get to that.
He's from a different time and age. Okay.
Yeah.
We cut to Evan drowning his sorrows at the one place we can all agree gives you the ambience needed in these trying times, thanks to its charming yet subtly tasteful decor and sensibly priced entrees. A family restaurant that offers more solitude to you than, say, a Chili's or an Applebee's. I'm, of course, speaking of the one and only home of the Hickory Bacon Burger, Ruby Tuesdays. Hickory Bourbon Bacon Burger. Sounds good. Evan shows his first signs of slipping when Milton calls him and asks where he is. He somehow mistakes the unforgettable family eatery as Diamond Tuesdays, while we get some weird flash on his face zoomed in and pixelated floating over, accompanied by music that seems to signify the dementia because it plays regularly from here on out whenever he has an episode. That's why I thought this cut did worse than the first one. I think the first one was like, you got it. You get that he's having an issue, you know, just by the way he acts, you can tell that he's having an episode, but this has to like really hammer over the head, this distortion. And, you know, I assume is what he was going for on purpose to make you feel as, you know, disoriented as Evan does. But it felt too over the top. Like it was more showing, not telling, in my opinion, than just seeing Evan acting weird in the other cuts. We would get that impression that he's having an episode.
Yeah.
You can tell though that Schrader shot it with this style in mind, and the studio cut it in a way that made Evan seem like, I don't know, more like he was losing it right away, you know, right after he first finds out that he's sick. Like he starts having these episodes pretty regularly and like just completely saying weird things to people like Cornish.
Croc means gun.
And Grok means gun.
I think one of the major differences with this cut versus the other one is we experience a lot more of this from Evan's perspective.
Yeah.
Observing Evan doing it. So I think that was, you know, part of the difference in the editing style.
I do think that this draws you in more in some ways. The other one just kind of feels like you're just an outside observer, kind of watching this guy lose his mind, whereas the other one, you really are kind of losing your mind with him in some ways, in a bad way.
Yeah.
Especially at the end.
It's effective at the end. We'll say that much. Whether or not it's good, but, you know. I haven't seen anything quite like it before on film, so.
No.
Milton finds him staring at the table, lost in thought, with a drink in his hands, and asks the waitress to get Evan some nondescript food rather than ordering crispy buttermilk chicken bites or an Asiago peppercorn sirloin like a normal person. Again, we talked about his other one, but it just really bugs me that he's like, could you get him some food and some coffee? And the waitress is like, yeah.
Sure.
Like, sure. I'll just bring some food.
Fuck me. I'll
Here's
just
some
figure it
food.
out. Whatever the fuck this guy wants. I'll just tell the chef some food.
Evan is angry when Milt gives the waitress his alcohol, which triggers his dementia, I guess, because the scene turns into a 90s music video for no reason, saying that wasn't very sociable. Yeah, they cut in the studio version. He just sort of blankly sits there when Milt.
No, he does say it in the studio cut
does
too.
He?
Yeah, he's mad.
I thought it was like he was like, hey, like in this one, which I didn't remember from the first time. Like he just seemed a little more angry about it. But
he just kind of like looks at the waitress and then he kind of stares off to space and then he looks at Milt and goes, that wasn't very sociable.
That's my medicine.
Daddy needs that.
Yeah. He tells Evan there's been a possible hit on Benear, which peps Evan right back up. I don't have the mental wherewithal or the patience to explain how this Decetadine links back to Benear again, But I will say that the way Milton lays it out in this cut makes far more sense than the studio cut somehow. I don't exactly know how, but it did to me too.
Yeah.
And that might just be because we already know the story because of the first one, but it did feel like this made a little bit more sense than just like random leaps of logic that they seemed like they're throwing at each other in the first cut that we just supposed to go along with.
Yeah. I felt like it was more streamlined. Like they talk about Benir's father having the disease and they know it's hereditary. So the chances are most likely that Benir has it. And that's why it's being funneled through all these channels to get to Benir eventually.
Yeah, it could just be the way in which they cut the conversation. Like maybe they changed the order of it in the other cut.
I think so
it
too,
made it more confusing.
It was more like they focused on Milton just kind of like laying it out straight without cutting back and forth to Evan cutting him off and like interjecting things.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it seemed more clear, and also actually made me like understand the first cut a little bit better, like how they actually did find Benir.
Also, when Milt shows Evan a picture of the Kenyan who died from jumping off the bridge,
there you go.
He says that he definitely is not a Kenyan and must be Middle Eastern. Actually, he calls him a fucking raghead. And that he, quote, has nothing against ragheads, except there's too many of them.
And they have a good laugh together.
And they chuckle, sensible chuckle at his racism, which feels completely out of character for him at this point, and ends our admiration for Paul Schrader not resorting to overt, over-the-top racism for once in a movie, especially in a movie about a white guy obsessed with murdering an Arabian guy. Turns out the studio just took all that fun away. It took away all that fun stuff in the editing.
I do wonder how folks in the CIA do feel about the Middle Easterns. I'm sure there are some that feel that same way, but I kind of feel like maybe don't paint them in that light, Paul Schrader, because I think it's more a reflection upon you as a person than it is on the CIA.
It was so overt that I'm like, okay, maybe he's just trying to get us to not like Evan. Like, I feel like this movie in general is a critique of the CIA and of the United States and the type of people that they take that job and stuff. So it's a weird whiplash of like trying to sympathize with this guy who's dying of dementia and his life is unfulfilled, and he's trying to bring some sort of semblance and order and closure to it. And also he's a racist who just wants to murder Arabian guys.
Yeah. It just felt so out of left field in this cut because up to this point, we kind of felt bad for Evan. And then suddenly he does this and you're just like, ooh.
Yeah.
It was jarring.
I'm sure that this is realistic. Yeah. I bet
there's
you
people like that.
I know military people and they're not super fun. And I think that they're trained to hate these people because they're the enemy, when they're stationed over there,
Yeah.
We won't get into that stuff, but I just feel like this is realistic, but at the same time, totally unnecessary for this cut.
Yeah, you didn't need it.
Yeah.
So I can see why the studio cut it, and I think it was a better choice to cut it out.
Definitely.
Yeah, it was just jarring, and I don't know. You should kind of root for your protagonist, and at that point, I was like,
yeah,
I don't really like.
Yeah,
now
well,
you're
fuck
just
this guy.
So it's not just about Benir. You're
he's
just
kind of a
racist.
racist. That's why he took this job and likes doing it.
Yeah, you're not actually looking out for the betterment of the country, and you're just a sociopath racist who wants to kill a bunch of people from the Middle East.
Yeah,
I definitely feel
George
like
W.
they slowly become more and more racist as they're stationed over there, and they because they're sick of being there and they don't like the way that everything is laid out over there, and they just get annoyed, and they're all kind of like I said, they're just taught to hate these people.
Also, you're interacting with like the worst.
Yeah, you were interacting with
culture would have to
terrorists
offer, and right. And like this guy was literally tortured by a guy, and and so
yeah.
It's believable. It just is jarring for this movie. Specifically, if they had done more throughout the movie to kind of paint Evan in this light, it wouldn't have been so jarring. It's just that this is like one of two scenes where he sort of goes off the rails in that way, and you're like, "Well, okay, weird."
The other one is pretty fucking jarring too.
Maybe if they got it like when he's having the discussion with the director and he slips a little bit and says something about like bombing the ragheads or something. And they make it, maybe it's like, maybe that's why they're trying to get him to retire. Like he's become unhinged and he's a little bit too far off the deep end.
I don't know. I feel like somebody with the credentials that they give him, that Schrader gave him, I feel like somebody that intelligent, that experience would be able to separate extremism from the actual folks of the Middle East, and his hate wouldn't be towards the general group of people,
right?
And just focus specifically on the terrorists themselves,
which is what the original cut had. Like, it's all about him.
So for for him to just be racist, like flat out, because it just comes off as flat out racist. It feels like a departure from the character that we have been led to have some empathy for, and it's just, and now at this point, I'm rooting for everybody to die.
I mean, it does kind of feel like a Schraderism. Like
it is.
Yeah. Even your protagonist is a piece of shit. Like
Schrader
like,
can't seem to. He can't seem to make a character who isn't racist. I don't know if it's because Schrader himself is racist. I'm sure he would argue that he is not, and that he just feels like these characters must be racist.
I'm just a mirror, man. I'm reflecting you guys back upon yourself, man.
To give it a benefit of the doubt, it could just be that he hates racism so much. He peppers it in specifically to make you not like a character. Like,
maybe.
Why pepper that into your protagonist? Like, shouldn't your protagonist be you and you speaking about your values through them?
Yeah, I think he just has it opposite. Like he's getting you, trying to give you a specific message that he feels about the CIA and about the United States and how it operates. And
I think so too. Yeah, I think he's trying to paint these people as if like they're all so bad. It's not like it's a one-sided affair with the things that are going on between the United States and the Middle East.
Yeah, it's not like, USA is good and, terrorists blowing up buses are bad. It's like,
we're all bad. A little give and take.
Maybe both organizations are kind of devoted to killing people. So
maybe humanity is just garbage.
Yeah.
I think that's Schrader's message, honestly, throughout all of his films.
Dying or bringing out the dead.
Yeah, even using Taxi Driver,
garbage.
Or using Taxi Driver example. One he's most famously known for is like, our protagonist is a murdering psychopath who was trained by the United States government to be a murdering psychopath.
Man, he really hates the U.S. government.
So, you should feel bad for rooting for Travis Bickle because he's not a good person.
All right, we spent enough time on this. Right. Don't cancel us, please, YouTube. We're not racist. We have Middle Eastern friends.
We didn't say ragheads. The movie said ragheads.
The movie said it. All right, we're going to have to edit that in post.
That's what Paul Schrader says.
I didn't say it. It wasn't me. Evan said it.
I mean, I wrote it, but I'm
not racist. I have wrote it, and I say it.
I do it in every movie I write, but it's not me.
Except for the one time it was me that said monkey.
Yeah, except that time I literally did it in a movie that I wrote
and directed.
Anyways.
All right. Again, in this cut, these couple of weak clues convince Evan that a man who has been dead for 22 years is actually alive and that he'll have to surface due to him having a rare form of anemia known as thalassemia. Then he delivers the line, "Benir's got it. It's come out as soon as blood." With a creepy half-snarled grin on his face while the camera is unnecessarily close to his face and pixelated again. Aggressive editing indeed.
So glad they left that in. That Schrader kept that cut.
And made it even creepier.
It's in his blood.
With that, we say goodbye to Ruby Tuesdays. Still gonna miss you.
R.I.P. Ruby Tuesdays.
Next, we see some science video of blood cells, and our narrator returns to tell us these are the cells of our antagonist, and that he'll also die from his condition, since there is no known cure. Neat stuff. We're finally introduced to Benir and his fundamentalist gang, who all seem like pretty chill dudes just hanging out in a bachelor pad in Kenya, reading books, drinking tea and stuff.
The usual.
Pretty relaxed, man.
Yeah, it's pretty chill.
Like a cool little hangout space.
Stick some posters on the wall. Chill out. Benir asks about the dude who jumped off a relatively short bridge, but I guess Romania has some strong undercurrents and that he drowned. He wants the Kenyan doctor who has been treating him to come to the chill pad as he attempts to get up for prayers. And we see how bad his condition truly is. He's wheezing. He can barely walk. He needs an IV and a cane. And you don't want to chill in a condition like that, no matter how cozy your place might be. We cut to Evan telling the CIA director that he believes Mohammed Banir is alive. He states his evidence calmly to the director, who is interested in what he has to say. This cut makes him seem rational and respected enough for the director to hear him out, while the studio cut made it seem like he's intruding on a meeting, unhinged, and is painted as a fool. Also during this scene, the camera pans down to show Evan's reflection in a plate, and for some reason his voice starts sounding like the devil for no goddamn reason. Didn't say it was perfect, it just gives this interaction a completely different feel than the studio version.
He does try and hear him out, but then, after he kind of, I don't know, he sort of says, I want to lead the task force. Right after he had just said, I want to go back to the field, the CIA director is kind of like, well, maybe this is the result of what we've been hearing from this other doctor, that you have dementia.
We see that the director has his doubts when he asks for a source of the information Evan has received, and because he wants to lead the task force to bring Banir down himself, even though he's been riding a desk for 6 years, and just the other day he asked to be reassigned to do a job out in the field. The director suggests they just let him die since it's inevitable if the source is correct, and Evan, unlike the studio cut, calmly states that they can't just let a man responsible for 17 kidnappings, 12 murders, and the bombing of a tourist bus to go free. Tourist. Different take, but he still says tourist weird.
The bombing of a tourist bus.
Yeah, it's a completely different angle than the studio cut, but he still says tourist.
Evan begins to have another zoomed in and pixelated dementia fit when the director calls for a doctor to enter the room, since he realizes what this must be about. His hand begins to shake, and you can see the terror in his face at what must be coming. The director explains that there's no way a CIA agent can leave blood and fingerprints. Oh, and use the same fake name he seems to use for everything at some random hospital just because it's in a different state without them finding out about it.
It's the worst fake name, too. Even Banir's like, Evan Blake. My name is Mike Wachowski.
Mike Wachowski.
Mr. Blake. Wachowski.
Slana Wachowski.
You don't even know your fake name, Mr. Blake.
They tell him they want to help, and they'll explain that he'll get a nice retirement dinner that the press and even the president will attend. But, of course, Evan only wants to know what they plan to do about Banir. They tell him Banir is dead and he's chasing ghosts thanks to the gremlins in his head. He snaps and tells the director that you fucked this up just like you fucked up everything else. But it's not clear if he's talking about they fucked up letting Banir get away or they fucked up confronting him about his disease. But one way or the other, he straight up loses it for the first time in this cut of the film. He's already was an out of his mind, unsympathetic loser at this point in the studio cut, but in this version, he's been pretty normal up till this point.
Yeah.
He says this director is just one fuck up in a line of fuck ups who fucked up Iran-Contra, 9/11, WMD, Afghanistan, Iraq, Benghazi. Mispronounces that one too. And he has his head so far up Obama's ass that all he can do is see his shit. Under this scene, we see him freaking out as he's escorted from the building, which flows much better than the studio cut, despite it being shot like an acid trip. Except they cut out the line of him saying, I resign. He's just like shouting silence.
Yeah.
Which was kind of weird.
I appreciated that edit a lot more.
I think it makes it seem less goofy, and also like I pointed out in the original cut when he's like lunging for his desk and stuff, why the security guards didn't open fire on him, thinking he was trying to grab a gun.
Also, the way he said,
I
resign in the studio cut was so weird. So I see why they took it out.
Didn't even like it, so he took it out. Yeah.
I don't know why he kept that shot in, though.
Because he's just shouting something, but you can't tell what he's saying if you hadn't watched the other cut.
Act 2, The Conflict.
Banir meets with his Kenyan doctor Wangari.
Sorry. I'm glad they kept that in this one.
Me too.
Banir meets with his Kenyan doctor Wangari, who doesn't seem to know anything about medicine or being a doctor. This scene was completely cut from the studio version, but it does add a little context as to why Bannier doesn't want Wangari to come to his house later in the film. He's just kind of like, this guy doesn't know shit.
I don't want him here.
Shit, we hired the witch doctor instead.
We see Evan at home drinking sake while staring at an American flag he has hanging on the wall with a big hole in it. And then he starts tripping balls on sake, I guess, because he starts seeing images of what I'm assuming is his childhood with monsters screaming underneath it for some reason. Before being interrupted by Milton at the door. Evan hides all of his dementia books and answers the door to find Milt, who has stopped by to drop off Evan's stuff. Evan offers Milt some of his LSD-laced sake and says he screwed up pretty bad today, huh? See, it doesn't feel nearly as like jarring of like what happened with the CIA in this cut. It was like, I lost my temper and I went off the rails a little bit. Whereas in the other one, it was like, he just kind of was a fuck up over and over and over again. And it seemed like he was just like unnecessarily obsessed with Bannier in that cut. Yeah. Whereas in this one, he's kind of like, we just found out that this guy might be alive. Can I go and get him? And then when he gets fired, he's more kind of concerned about the fact that he's getting fired, but he also wants them to make sure that they take care of Bannier at the same time. So, this cut did a lot better job with that, I feel like. He tells Milt the agency won't do a thing about Bannier since they assume he's crazy and he actually has motivation that makes sense for him to go and do the job himself in this cut. Milton tells him about the Romanian doctor who had been prescribing the magical combination of drugs that keep people like Bannier with his thalassemia alive. Right? You know, it's like a experimental drug cocktail that I don't even know, like, how did they find out about this experimental cocktail of drug? Has he really just been thinking about it?
Yeah, well, they said that the doctor is he's a research doctor. He's not like a medical doctor, so like he maybe been researching into it. I guess, and that's why it's
him. Why does Evan know about this magical cocktail to treat thalassemia that?
Originally, why was he
must have
for
just come up? Yeah, within the last couple of years, it must have just become a thing.
I took it as his obsession.
Like he's been researching thalassemia this whole time too, just to
staying current on it.
He knows Bannier has probably going to have it because his dad had it and it's hereditary, so he stays up to breast he stays abreast on the latest thalassemia research.
Yeah, it's unrealistic. If he's really obsessed about Bannier, that this would be the perfect way to track him down because it's such a new and experimental treatment that somebody in Bannier's position would be desperate enough to try it.
Evan has a dementia fit again as Milt explains that the guy who jumped off the bridge was the middleman between possible Bannier and this doctor. He stares off into space with his mouth open, just like John Rambo in the hospital earlier, before snapping out of it when Milt asks if he's okay. Over in Mombasa, Bannier asks his right-hand man to go to Romania and bring the doctor back to Kenya since his local doctor seems to know less about medicine than Dr. Dre. Bannier tells Asim to shave his beard and embrace techno music to fit in with the Europeans.
Get those Euro beats.
Get those European ways. Get those
European ways. Back in America, Evan and Milt track down the doctor's OkCupid profile and says this guy is a specialist in thalassemia. Evan is convinced he is treating Bannier and says,
Mohammed Bannier, you think you can hide? Nobody can hide from the Reaper.
But he puts on his Blue Oyster Cult record and starts jamming out with
Don't fear the Reaper.
The opening chords of Don't Fear the Reaper start, and we see Evan load up an arsenal of guns before tossing one to John Rambo. Wait, no, still that better movie that's been playing in my head this whole time.
I like the touch of Milton in the background hitting the cowbell.
Oh my God, that'd be amazing.
Milton just comes in.
Carving his name on bullets.
Just writes Bannier in it. Milt rightfully starts to question Evan's judgment when he suggests that they try and tap into the correspondence between Dr. Cornell and Abdi, the guy who jumped off the bridge, since that would be bending the laws a bit, since now Evan is ex-CIA.
Bending the laws even when you are CIA.
Yeah,
but we won't get into that.
Yeah, some things that just came to light. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they've been doing this for 20 years, 30 years. Evan explains he knows Benir is alive because after he was extracted, he had his doubts that Benir was dead. So he sent out some intelligence in the form of a cable that would be intercepted at the highest levels that Benir was a double agent. This drove Benir into hiding, and he's remained hidden magically for 22 years like the body of Jimmy Hoffa. I just this is the part that's just so far-fetched. It's like this guy just dropped off the map for 22 years.
Right.
I mean, his goons don't really seem to be the best at anything, really. So
yeah. Well, I don't know. Like, I wonder how much activity Bin Laden was putting out prior to his untimely demise.
Yeah.
Because it seemed
But at
like
least he was
that
being
was 10
sheltered
years.
by still had people
His
helping
family
him and supporting him.
Kind of.
Right?
I mean, it seemed like he was living pretty much with his family, but it doesn't really seem like he was actively involved in orchestrating anything.
Yeah, which I don't think Benir was either. In this,
no. So
sense.
it's not out of the realm of possibility that he would drop off the face of the planet for that long, and especially as he's getting sicker and sicker.
Yeah. I didn't have a problem buying it. Also, considering he's got like 4 guys that work for him now, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I guess.
Everybody else just went to go
and
fight
it sounded
the
like
real
he
fight.
was more of a spiritual leader or something, like a cult leader. Like he wrote about stuff, and so it's like he had a couple of devoted followers, and that's all he needed.
He's more like Charlie Manson.
I was going to compare him to Terrence Mann in Field of Dreams. It's kind of like he just disappeared after writing all these things and just lives in a little place in Brooklyn. He goes on to say that guys like him don't just die. You have to pull out their hearts with your bare hands because, like all Spider friends, he's a true believer.
Excelsior!
Milton creepily says, "You've been giving this a lot of thought, haven't you?" Like a serial killer looking into the mirror, asking himself if he wants to skin his mom and rape her corpse. It's just so creepily off-putting. You've been giving this a lot of thought. Ugh, made my skin crawl. The doorbell rings and Evan tells Milt not to answer it since he doesn't want his neighbors to see the weird little freak he hangs out with.
His little twink.
Evan finds a CIA doctor at the door who tells him they want to help treat his condition and not to leave things the way that they did. With him telling them to go fuck themselves to their face multiple times. Evan agrees to get treatment and says he'll drop at the doctor's office the next day, but then goes right back to plotting a trip around the world to kill an Arabian guy who has probably been dead for 22 years. We just have to keep hammering that home. This cut, last cut, just can't give up the search for this guy that might as well be dead, Mm-hmm. The fact that he's breathing at all just pisses Evan off to the point where he's obsessed with this guy. Milt asks what that was all about, and Evan comes clean about having dementia. He has another episode when he explains how long he's known about his condition, where he snaps and has an angry outburst about the CIA asking Milton about him. This scene is super pixelated and weirdly cut, similar to an Oliver Stone film in the 90s. Again, Evan asks why me. I didn't do anything wrong because, quote, "It wasn't like I was butt-fucking chimpanzee assholes in the Congo and invented AIDS." So yeah, that happened in this cut.
What the fuck, Paul Schrader? What? Why?
Jesus Christ, dude.
What value is added from that line?
Milton tries to convince Evan not to throw what little time he has left away on pursuing this Benir dude, like a rational person. But Evan says he wants to do something worth remembering with his time, while the camera zooms uncomfortably close to Nic Cage's forehead and eyes for no goddamn reason.
Hey, at least it's not centered on the flag with a hole blown in it like the other guy.
Yeah. like zooms into his forehead and then his eyes and then his ear and then down to his mouth while he's drinking sake. I honestly just think they just zoomed in and just left it in one spot, and that's what ended up in that spot on the.
Yeah, like
Probably it. But it did feel like he went out of their way to take the flag out of the shot, because in the original cut or the studio cut, it's Evan in one corner of the screen, and this entire other side of it is a blurry flag on the wall with a hole blown in it, as in, like, my interpretation of it was this busted version of the United States is what's saying this, not Evan the character. But in this cut, it's focused on Evan, making it clear that it's Evan who's got this derangement.
In Bucharest, Asim gets a gun and car to drive around while making a dumb face, but mercifully, this is shorter this time. He just made that dumb face forever on that last cut. We skip completely over the scene where Evan loses his ability to drive, but is being driven around by Milton for some inexplicable reason to no place in particular. Maybe to Ruby Tuesday for Sangria Sundays. Yeah, they completely cut that bit.
He was just trying to juxtapose Abdi driving in his car in Bucharest and Evan driving in his car with Milton at the same time, or presumably just to mirror the two of them going on.
Yeah, they kind of cut back and forth between both scenes. Yeah,
I love how Abdi always has a look like he's just smelled a gnarly fart.
Yeah. That's why he had the beard originally.
That's Asim.
Didn't notice a sneer.
Abdi was the guy who jumped off the bridge.
Sorry.
Get him
Asim.
right.
My bad. Fucking A names.
Evan tells Milton he's going to Romania after he says more money was put into the bridge jumper Abdi's account. Milton decides to tag along since Evan saved him. So this wasn't in the original cut where he says that you saved me, so I owe you one. Again, this makes for better character development, since dropping this in way earlier than in the previous cut lets us know why this guy just risked everything to go to the other side of the planet to help him with this mission. So this whole exchange is no longer undercut by fun, goofy music and fits in way better with what's happening. Milton gets them fake passports, and Evan sets up a plan to meet up with an old flame named Michelle. They head to Romania and meet Michelle in a jazz club where Evan fires up a cigarette. He tells the waiter the whole country is a smoking section and a zany little freakout, that we're not really sure if we're trying to see his dementia issues or to expose the fact that he hasn't been to Romania in a long time, which we kind of talked about in the Dying of the Light cut.
Yeah, it sounds more like he just hasn't been to Romania in 30 years.
Yeah.
But then in the hotel later, he thanks Milton for helping him in the restaurant with the smoking thing. So I guess it was the dementia.
Maybe it's a both combination. Like he just flashed back, didn't realize that he wasn't in Romania in the 90s anymore. Who knows?
I was kind of surprised that Schrader kept this in this cut, but then I remembered it's kind of racist. So I guess it had to stay in. Crucial.
Since I think they included smoking's mandatory in Romania. I don't think that was in the original cut. Was it?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
This whole country is one big smoking section.
Yeah. Well, yeah. This whole country smells like an ashtray.
Evan apologizes to Michelle for being a lunatic who doesn't realize non-smoking sections exist in Romania, since, based on this beautiful restaurant they're eating at and all of the gorgeous shots of Bucharest, it must be a shithole. Evan stares at Michelle longingly while we see a flash of what we can perceive is his view, like over the top of him, looking up and down her neck, insinuating that he loved this girl, he still loves this girl, something they didn't do in the original studio cut, that I think really kind of sets up more of an emotional connection between these two. Milt asks how they met, but Michelle wants to know how Evan and Milt met, and Milton tells the story about how Evan saved him. But in this version, he just says that he lost an asset. And then the agency stepped back and left him on his own. And then Evans swooped in to save the day instead of saying he accidentally let the son of a cabinet minister die.
Died or killed him?
It
He
just
just
says
says
his own
hands,
I
right?
lost the son of the cabinet
Yeah.
minister, which means he died
He
for
fucking
sure.
killed him. He murdered him.
Probably slit his throat. Yeah.
Switchblade slipped. Switchblade slipped.
Whoops. I've been thinking about this for a long time. Milton excuses himself, and Michelle asks when Evan is going to reach over the table and kiss her. He obliges her, and they go at it hardcore in the restaurant, like really raunchy stuff. We can't even show you or talk about it, but yeah, it gets pretty hardcore.
Comes over and says, "Excuse me, sir, there's no sex in the restaurant." And he's like, "This whole place is an orgy."
Yeah. This is a non-sexing section.
I've seen that porn. There's a lot of porn that comes out of here. Can't tell me any different. In all seriousness, this cut, Schrader makes this feel actually romantic. And you're actually excited that these two are reconnecting. But in the studio cut, it just felt like two boring characters having a very forced, awkward, sterile kiss in the middle of the restaurant. This one, it's like undercut with the jazz music and like there's this kind of romantic vibe to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And you can tell that they actually have a connection. And the other one, it was just like Michelle just felt like a stranger who was just forced to awkwardly interact with these people. Mm-hmm. And then Evan kisses her.
Yeah. And then they recontextualized it so that in the original cut, Milton gets weirded out by them talking about this bullet.
Yeah, they completely cut that too.
And he's like, I got to go back to the room. And then in this, it's like them talking about Evan almost getting killed or Milton almost getting killed and then Evan saving him is what makes Milton want to leave and go away.
Yeah. She also says he says, did you have to say that? And in the other one, it was about the bullet ring thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly what they were trying to infer with this one. Yeah. What exactly did she say that was so bad in this cut? Asked about him and Milton meeting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Evan heads back to his room having knocked Michelle's back out of alignment. I'm assuming. Well, I should say he heads back to Heat and Milt's room where Milt lays in bed with a look on his face that makes me think a priest is about to walk in the room and rape him.
This is the moment Milt's been waiting for. That's the only reason why he came on this trip.
It's just all sorts of disturbing for no real reason.
Yeah, why are they sharing a room even?
Save money. It's expensive.
You gotta save some money.
Yeah,
Romania's expensive.
Yeah.
I guess maybe he's supposed to be upset that his friend is dying and he wishes that he had more time with this girl. Not exactly sure what I was supposed to get from this, from that dimly lit, please don't let dad be drunk look on his face.
Maybe he thought that Evan brought Michelle back to the room and he's going to have to pretend to be asleep. He's going to have to play possum while these two fogies went at it.
Is this happening? Oh no.
Can I join, please?
I just wanted to sleep from the jet lag.
I've been thinking about this for a long time.
As he stands at the foot of the bed while they're making out.
Pulls off his pajama pants and jumps in.
This whole place is one orgy.
Anyway, Evan thanks Milton for helping him in the restaurant with his dementia episode in a very genuine exchange that was also completely cut from the studio version. And he tells Milton if he wants a family, not to put it off, which is one line that makes you 100% more sympathetic to what this guy is going through. Mm-hmm. One piece of dialogue changes your entire outlook on a character and also changes your perception of how the other characters in the film feel about him as well.
Yeah.
I don't really understand why they had to cut this from that other version.
I don't either.
I guess to make Evan seem more like a piece of shit. I think that feels like that's what they were going for in that other version was.
Yeah, he's just a piece of shit who's focused on revenge.
Well, why not have him say the racist stuff in the other version?
Yeah. They made it seem more like in the other version, like Michelle
they have common
still
sense.
wants to be with him.
Yeah.
And he's the one who blew her off and continues to blow her off, you know, to make it seem like he's more pathetic and obsessed with his job. But in this one, it's more like they had a past and nothing came of it, and that's it. Like, it's not.
Yeah.
it's not going to go anywhere further.
But does
or
it
can't.
In this version? Doesn't he say something to Milton about she wanted kids and a family and he didn't? Or was that or was that Dying of the Light?
No, I don't think.
Or did I just totally invent that in my head?
No, in
this scene, he says, "If you want to have a family or have kids, don't put it off."
But I thought he had mentioned
in the
to
hospital,
Milton that Michelle wanted it.
In the hospital, he says, "No, I don't have kids or family."
Yeah,
I know.
I think in this, he just has a line about. In both of these, he has a line about because Milton's asking him what's his history with Michelle before they go to Bucharest, right? And he says,
maybe that's right. Yeah,
just took it one day at a time. One of those things, see where it goes type of thing, implying that they were a thing, but never really serious and what could have been maybe.
And now you can kind of tell he regrets not, having a family with her. And
it's all he wants to get involved with her now that he's about to die. So.
Yeah. Michelle, Milton, and Evan head to confront Dr. Cornell at the university hospital. They ask him about prescribing this magic cocktail that I don't want to talk about again. That only Benir could need. He says he met a guy once in a coffee shop 2 years earlier who said he was getting the drug for someone else whose name had been redacted from the medical forms. And then Milton is like, "You're prescribing medicine for someone you don't know, blah, blah, blah." Evan has a hardcore dementia attack where everything turns into a Nine Inch Nails, where everything turns to Nine Inch Nails video vision again. He laughs like a crazy person and rubs his head before calling the guy Cornish. Thankfully, he didn't call him cornbread because I'm guessing Schrader has strong opinions about never mind. He snaps back to reality, and when he tells Michelle to arrest Cornell, the doctor comes clean. He says a man threatened his wife's family if he didn't get him the drugs, and that he wants him to go back to Kenya with him. They make a plan to follow Dr. Cornish Gamehen to the spot where he plans to pick up the money and meet with Asim. Meanwhile, Asim is right outside the hospital, sees them leave, and never alerts Benir that something fishy is happening, even in this cut. Why even put that in there? Why is that scene in there?
Maybe just to show that Asim is already tailing his every move, but we already kind of know that based on how Asim came all the way here for it.
Mm-hmm. But if he's tailing his every move, then why does he not alert Benir that something, so that there's some people talking to the doctor and something weird is going on? Maybe we should find a different doctor.
Thinks he can handle it? I don't know. It makes no fucking sense.
I guess.
Yeah, it could be. I guess maybe it's his chance to prove himself to Benir, so he doesn't want to screw it up and immediately saying, "Hey, I got here and the doctor's talking to the CIA agents. I screwed this up." It wouldn't be the best plan.
I guess. He sure does prove himself.
Yeah.
Back in Mombasa, Benir says he respects Cornell because he asked for 30,000 euros to come see him, which makes him a crook as well. Criminal logic, can't trust anybody who's not a crook like you. At the hotel in Romania, Milton finds Evan missing from the room and the drugs he's supposed to be taking for his dementia in the garbage, which bodes well for the crazy dangerous mission they're about to embark on. Milton walks the streets of Bucharest for a minute until he finds Evan counting the windows of the Grand Bucharest Hotel. Hey, if Schrader can pull entire scenes from the studio cut and just plop them into his cut, I can reuse my dumb Wes Anderson joke.
Fair enough.
Thanks to a different music choice and a long shot of Milton walking to Evan, you feel this scene much more than you did in the studio cut. You really see that Milton actually cares, and you also feel for this guy who has mostly managed to keep it together up to this point, and now he's having a full-on, mind-melting fit where he just he doesn't know where the hell he is. He's just mumbling to himself with his mouth open, so...
Yeah,
I just that one little shot just changes the whole feel.
Yeah, I don't think Nic Cage did a bad job acting in this movie in a lot of parts. This is the one scene that I think he did the best, where he just kind of has that slack-jawed, confused look on his face that I've seen people with dementia have. So he really did a good job hitting it.
Yeah, I think this version of it, the way that it's cut, makes his choices that seemed goofy in the other one makes sense because he was going over the top for the dementia, shots, these weird music video vision shots that Schrader wanted to put in. So I think it saves his performance a lot in this one. He looks at Milton like he's a fucking alien werewolf or something while wearing the most ridiculous hat you could have found to put him in that shot. Might as well have put him in a jester's hat or something. Evan says he was trying to get some, but he couldn't find any, so he kept walking. I'm guessing we all know what he was trying to get, right?
Yeah.
Gum.
I've seen those videos for research purposes.
He does say, I was trying to get some and I couldn't find any. He doesn't say what he was trying to find, like he forgot what he was trying to find.
Yep. That's pretty good. I like that.
I think it was well done, yeah. He says he couldn't remember the name of the hotel, then rubs Milton's jacket like it's made of dog fur or something. He explains the phenomenon of sundowning that we talked extensively about in the Dying of the Light episode over images of a road and then the sun setting and shots of him looking around in slow-mo and stuff. Some of these like Schrader vision things just don't really make a whole lot of sense, but also are kind of like, I guess he had to keep that feel going throughout. Milt tells Evan that Cornell called about the meetup and they head to the hotel, and Evan freaks out because Milt tries to show him where the hotel is that he couldn't remember the name of and ended up in the park spaced out reciting prime numbers or some shit, which I guess was supposed to be like him having a weird angry outburst, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was like now that you've reminded me where the hotel is, I know where the hotel is. Don't put a bib on me.
He's lucid again, so now he's mad. Like, stop treating me like a idiot. I know what I'm doing now.
Which I bet you is pretty similar to what actually happens with dementia patients and stuff. Yeah. I haven't spent a ton of time around people with dementia, but this feels pretty authentic.
Yep.
At a Christmas market of some sort with 3 rows of shops that somehow became a labyrinth in the studio cut, Evan and Milt watch as Dr. Cornell pulls out the money Benir sent to a wired account. Cornell comes out and is confronted by Asim, who spots Denny from the room and some doofus in a dopey hat staring right at him as conspicuously as possible.
Oh, hi, Asim.
What money? Sorry. Asim takes off and Milton gives chase while that crazy techno music from Mortal Kombat starts playing.
I thought it was fucked up when I thought it was fucked up when he slits his throat. You just hear "finish him."
Fatality.
It's weird. It's like the beat from that Mortal Kombat song accompanied by some really annoying like scream singing. It's
the
just
best
really annoying.
Music money can buy.
God, it was so bad. Mercifully, Schrader cut this scene way shorter than the studio did, and we cut to Evan asking the doctor for the money and his passport. He tells him he dodged a bullet and that he'll live happily ever after having incredible family meals with his people at Diamond Wednesdays or whatever Ruby Tuesday is called in Romania.
He's going to have some happy, fun family time, whatever the fuck Eddie says.
Some fun time, family fun. Milt catches up to Asim and just straight up slits his throat like a psychopath that he obviously is, while a really shitty loop some dude put together in GarageBand 10 minutes ago plays loudly over the scene. Even in this
I did notice
cut,
they toned down the blood a little bit when he sliced.
Yeah, but
his
even
throat.
in this cut,
Right.
they left the shot of his throat not slit.
Not slit.
Yeah, when
Right
he rolls
after.
him over. Yeah, he's weird.
Maybe
You would
that's why
figure
he
the
toned
Schrader
down
would
a
have done
little
that.
bit.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why he cut out as much. Seemed like it was way more gory than it needed to be in the studio cut for some reason, and then in this one he toned it down a little bit, just maybe so it looked less comical when you obviously see that it doesn't have his throat cut.
His coat's covering it. It's fine.
Yeah, there was a blood stain under his head. It's fine.
Milt takes Asim's phone and wallet and then hides his body like a true CIA agent. And by that, I mean he doesn't hide it in the slightest. Cats bury their shit better than this guy hides a body in a crowded park in broad daylight. Over in Kenya, Banir enjoys a nice sunset. You know, you must enjoy the little things in life. Even as an evil crime lord or whatever he is now. Is he even a criminal at this point in the movie?
I don't know. They cut out the part, I think, where he threatens his underlings family.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to make him a little more sympathetic or...
Yeah, you're right.
Less deadly,
He's just a guy.
in this one. He's just a broken old man. Not old, but broken, dying man who doesn't really... can't do anything anymore. Like, he's not as dangerous as he was. Which is what they were telling Evan. It's what the CIA was telling Evan. You know, it does make it more sympathetic. I think it was just they're trying to get it home across the point that Evan is basically going on a fool's errand. Like, it's just a personal vendetta thing. It has no meaning in the grander scheme of things.
Yeah, this whole film is like
exactly how it ends. There's no meaning.
Yeah, this whole film is like that scene in The Last Jedi where they go to the Casino Royale planet. Just fucking pointless.
He asks about Asim, and his henchman says he texted that the doctor will arrive on Wednesday. Evan and Milt get prepped for the next day by Googling on the old Yahoo again, while Evan calls Mombasa the asshole of East Africa. Which is kind of mean. He says he's going to pose as Cornell and fly to Mombasa in his place, while Milt pretends to be Asim and texts back and forth with Banir's henchman. Do you think they use emojis and stuff? Like, whoops, left my shoe on the plane, winky face, plane, explosion. Evan calls Michelle, who rounds up a visa for Milt and a gay hairdresser for Evan. Apparently, Evan has a bucket list, and he's not about to leave the top box on his list unchecked.
Get his hair did. I noticed
not that.
I noticed that they did kind of tone down the stereotypical gayness of the hairdresser in this one. Yeah. He has less lines. Although he still eye fucks Milt when he leaves. Like, I noticed that. I didn't notice that the first time around, but before he leaves and goes down the stairs, he gives Milt a look. Yeah. You know, because you can't. How would you know the character's gay if he doesn't want to have sex with the only other young,
with every
male man in the movie?
Creepy twink.
Oh, hi, Denny. This guy teaches these two CIA agents how to put on a fake beard while the soundtrack from The Social Network plays in the background. Not a joke, lifted straight from the score of Social Network. Schrader did a pretty good job of picking needle drop music to just, kind of score this version, because it's obviously he just found, soundtracks from other like scores from other movies and tried to fit the mood that he was going for, which is a very common thing that directors do when they're cutting a film. They try and find something that approximates the feel that they're going for, and then they give that to the person who's scoring the film, and then they go kind of off of that. But that track is just way too recognizable to go unnoticed. Outside the room, Michelle warns Milton not to follow Evan to Kenya, because Evan is retired and Milt might get shot in the arm at an Australian hotel pool or something. Oh, wait, that entire sequence doesn't happen in this version. But what we get is so much better. So much better. We literally have no idea what happens to Milton after Evan goes and sees Banir.
No clue.
We do still get that scene where he says, like, if I'm not out in an hour, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Which, maybe I'm assuming that maybe Milton eventually comes and gets Banir. Getting ahead of ourselves again. Yeah, it becomes Evan or
Milt's. To slit someone's throat.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's Milt's mission.
I'm not here for you. I'm here for killing.
Evan has another fun, pixelated, zoomed way too much daymare full of phones ringing and guys screaming something in Islamic, while the footage just starts to distort and turn crazy colors. I hope you like that kind of stuff, because there's a whole lot of that coming soon.
Yeah.
It's the kind of the same thing. They do this weird, like, everything turns rainbow vision and kind of like just weird warped out shit.
Yeah.
That's going to come way into play here in a second. Evan is startled out of his wacky dream by Milt, who lets Evan know he has his visa and can go with him to Kenya, even though Michelle just told him, like, maybe you should wait a day to tell him that you got your visa so that he can kind of rethink this crazy thing that he's about to go do. Evan says the police found Asim's body in the park. How? How did they find him? Oh my God. That's crazy. Evan says they should pack up and head to the airport and text Asim's phone that he's been detained by security before they get on the flight. When Milton asks, "What about Michelle?" Evan says, "Don't tell her how the story ends," since he knows that this movie doesn't actually have an ending. Foreshadowing.
Wait, go back really quick before that. So were they going to text from Asim's phone to Banir that Asim got detained by security?
Yeah. He says,
because if that happened, why would he still have access to his phone to text?
They don't take the phone away. They put you in a room. I only know this because I traveled with somebody that got detained at the airport, and so they take you to a room. You have all your stuff with you. You just have to lay it out. But he was able to let me know as they were detaining him that he was being detained.
Got it.
And I told him,
be like, security got me. LOL.
Yeah.
I'm getting
eggplant emoji.
Eggplant.
Okay symbol. Finger pointing. They're doing the search.
It's not a good sign when they're doing this, pulling on a rubber glove.
Rubber glove arm.
And then spitting into it.
Spitting into the hand like Brokeback Mountain.
Act 3. Time to resolve some shit.
Evan lands in Mombasa dressed like Dr. Cornell, while Milt shows up dressed like an English football hooligan for some reason. I'm telling you, this guy is in it just for the adventure. Evan's mission, however, comes second to him picking up some duty-free liquor at the airport. Banir's guys are watching for Evan at the airport. They take him to the Wangari clinic where Nic Cage, in a fake beard, also sporting a goofy Romanian accent, pretending to be a CIA agent, pretending to be a doctor, seems to know more about medicine than this guy does. The guy who's supposed to be a doctor.
Yeah. Well, again, they established
he's not
the greatest in Kenya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mombasa.
Kind of what they were going for is like, okay, medicine is not quite as advanced in Mombasa as, say,
especially
Romania.
to treat a super rare blood disease that 2,000 people have or whatever it is.
He asks if they are treating the mystery patient he's there to see at the clinic, and Wangari explains that they're treating him at his home. Then he asks if they're treating him here at the clinic again, which was either to make him seem like he's having another dementia episode, or they accidentally left that same take in the movie for some reason, which there's really no way to be sure, but I'm pretty sure Schrader fucked up and reused that same cut twice.
Accidentally used it again.
It was in the other cut too.
Where he says it twice?
Yes, and they also have the same reaction from the people, like, no, to his house. Like they, so I think it's supposed to be a second ago. It's supposed to be a dementia attack.
Dementia thing. Okay.
Because one of my questions from the first one was, why didn't he clear the story with Dr. Cornell? Like, Cornell would presumably know that he's been asked to treat him at his house. So it seemed like he had no knowledge of what the actual plan was when he decided to impersonate Dr. Cornell.
I think they would give Cornell very little details, though. Just you're going to Mombasa. Evan says he'll go over all the charts that night, and we'll see the mystery patient the next day at his house. But Dr. Wangari won't be coming, since I think he has a doctorate from Evers College or maybe DeVry, and like me, now has a 4-year degree that isn't accredited anywhere except Kenya.
They bought it online.
It's a 6-week program.
Back at the hotel, Evan bones up on some thalassemia and checks to see if anyone has ever just ended a movie in the middle of a scene with some neat pixelated art. No. The answer was no. Keyword was. Evan meets up with Milton and they talk about guns Milton bought that will literally not be seen in this cut. Evan sniffs a plant, hoping it's that plant African tribes rub on their gums to get high, but unfortunately, it seems to be a plant native to Australia for some reason. You know, despite being in Kenya. Outside, Evan says Mombasa smells weird, which I'm assuming is actually probably true, honestly. Evan says when he groped Milton in the park like a freak, his jacket felt like fresh-shaved pussy. Wait, no, sorry. That's a different Schrader movie. Also terrible, by the way. He said it felt like dog fur, and he can't even trust his own senses of touch anymore. Or his own sense of touch anymore. Which is fucking sad if you really do think about
Pretty
it.
horrible.
Yeah. Despite being an awful person, it does kind of make you feel a little sympathetic for him still. Like, oh, geez, he's losing all that shit. That would suck.
Yeah. Can't even tell where he is half the time.
Yeah.
This dude,
He's
you know,
really
if you really
slipping.
think about it, like he was top notch. I mean, one of the most highly decorated people in the CIA. I mean, that is, you got to have some wicked high IQ for that kind of stuff. And then to have your brain just slowly, your ability to think straight taken away from you is pretty sad.
Right. I think that's probably what's the most terrifying thing an intelligent person can never experience is their brain deteriorating and there's nothing they can do.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just, that'd be awful. We see everything in a pixelated Schrader vision again, and Evan snaps at it by realizing that Grok is gone. Rocky Road, chunk. Sorry, he kind of slips into thinking he's Sloth from the Goonies for about 3 seconds there. Evan love chunk.
Rocky Road, chunk.
He can't bring a Glock to the meetup because they'll frisk him, so he debates bringing some syringes, or maybe he'll just get up close and personal, slice him, and let his blood rain down on him like the bukkake shower he experienced in Bucharest. I guess that's item 2 on his bucket list.
I missed that line in the other cut. Like
the blood
like
rained down on him.
Yeah,
or
like
whatever.
in Mandy when he slices.
Slices his throat.
You ripped my shirt. That's that guy, and the blood pours down on him.
That's what this was all
stares at
about,
the
man. He
camera.
ripped his shirt in that interrogation scene.
You ripped my shirt.
You ripped my ear.
Evan says he brought a belt blade, but that's about all he'll be able to sneak in. Then the goofy-looking soccer hooligan says, "No problem, sport." Like this is an Archie comic. After Evan thanks him for coming along on this far-fetched, haphazard, wacky adventure. Could have cut that shit out, but he didn't.
No problem, old sport. Fucking weird, dude.
Yeah.
Beniers guys pick up Evan in front of the hotel to the soundtrack of an old Twilight Zone episode for some reason. It's the weirdest music choice in this entire recut. Like,
Is it
you
actually
can't
from
even
Twilight
hear-
Zone? Because I felt like it was.
It felt
it had to
very
be.
similar to like
had to be.
something from like a 1960s original, you know.
Yeah. And this
Twilight
is where
Zone
the colors
episode.
start completely saturating everything. in
Yeah.
different
I mean, that's what it
colors.
was. Is he was like watching some Twilight Zone episodes. He was like, "What would Rod Serling do at the end of this film?"
Well, it's weird. Like, you can't even hear the characters talking over this
Yeah.
weird ass music.
Yeah.
It's such a strange choice. So fucking weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes on for like a really long time.
Yeah.
I think it's just
long.
trying to set up that like he's just in a full on dementia episode for the entire rest of the movie. Like
I guess.
it's
Yeah.
just what he's seeing everywhere, his colors all over the place, and
You know,
Yeah.
if
it's
you
distorted
think
and
about it,
confusing.
this would be very stressful for somebody in this position,
yeah.
you know, and if anything would trigger his dementia, it'd be, you know, like he's flying, he's jet lagged, he's in a very, very stressful situation.
Yes.
It still doesn't
in a
really
different
explain
place.
what happens at the end, but I guess I get that it's really triggering his episode here.
All right, well, next we see some B-roll of Mombasa all pixelated in Schrader vision that goes on for an uncomfortably long time with this weird-ass music playing under it. I feel like this was a sign things were about to go off the fucking rails. They arrive at the gang's favorite hangout spot, and Evan sees his arch nemesis come into view looking like an anemic Osama bin Laden with asthma. Benier doesn't recognize Evan at all, which is probably because he hasn't been fapping to a picture of his corpse he paid someone on Fiverr to draw like Evan has. Which, side note, guys, did you know you could hire people to draw whatever you want on Fiverr? This isn't an ad for them. I'm just talking about my personal experience. Like, I had someone commission a drawing of the three of us. But you know what, guys? I'm going to say that's for me. I'm going to save that one for me. I've already said too much, so we're just going to keep moving on.
If that isn't why Fiverr was invented, I don't know what it would have been.
What's the point? Yeah. What's the point of it?
Why not?
Just like in the original movie, they exchange pleasantries, and Evan drops the knowledge he learned on the internet the night before. This is why that Dunning-Kruger effect is so prevalent these days. Couple minutes on Google and you think you're an expert. Like that time I said that thing about suppressors. God, I hope I was right. Otherwise, I'm going to get destroyed in the comments. For some reason in this cut, Evan seems much more nervous in this scene, and it feels like Benier might be figuring out something's wrong. But before he does, Evan asks to use the little boy's room. He jiggles the handle for 2 seconds in this cut as well before coming back out and telling them he left a floater. Benier's henchman is immediately instructed to go take care of it, which I mean, like, is there no hierarchy in this organization? Like, don't they have some dumb guy who failed fundamentalist jihad school or something they keep around for this sort of stuff? But then again, on second thought, that type of guy probably failed jihad school because he prematurely blew himself up. So,
yeah,
it does kind of make sense, you know?
Yeah. They got a flat structure at this place. Everybody does everybody else's jobs.
Yeah, except for Benier, who apparently does nothing, just sits in a chair all day.
Fucking lays around, lazy fuck.
Loser.
Evan knocks out the only henchman protecting Benier in the bathroom, and from this moment until the end of the film, shit gets progressively weirder and weirder, which, up until this point, I didn't think Schrader could top Dog Eat Dog's fucking weird-ass ending, but boy, did he fucking prove me wrong. Some music starts playing that sounds like someone strapped a guitar to a guy while he was twitching on the end of a noose, and they sampled the rattling noises the guitar made. Half of the shots look like two movies playing over each other. The color grade gets all sort of psychedelic with tons of pixelated, weird, closed-circuit television shots. It's just really bizarre and almost unwatchable. I guess it's supposed to signify Evan's brain going into full-blown collapse, but I have a feeling if I had to watch this film again, it would cause a fucking aneurysm. Evan comes out of the bathroom and reveals himself to be none other than Evan Lake. And I half expected Benier to drop the same type of, who? The guy of Guardians of the Galaxy says when Quill tells him his name is Star-Lord. Benier recognizes him and asks him where his backup is, but quickly realizes he came alone, since who the hell would be searching for this dude who no one else has thought of once in 22 years? Evan says he found him through the request of experimental thalassemia drugs, and even Benier thinks that sounds kind of far-fetched. Then Evan spaces out and says, yeah, for no reason. Well, Benier just wants to know how he's going to kill him. I get the sense he wants to die more than Evan even wants to kill him at this point.
This is probably true. Like he probably wants to die. Like, well,
Again,
at least I get to go out like a man instead of just
right. And he's a Muslim, so he can't commit suicide unless it's, you know,
in the name of Allah.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, it's
if
like,
you're a fundamentalist terrorist, yeah, but
right, you kill yourself for the cause, but he can't just kill himself because he's in pain. He'll go against his beliefs. Yeah, everything gets weird as fuck. The screen gets all pixelated, and we see some sort of cloud time lapse while some monster voices talk in the background. We hear him give some of his speech from the beginning of the film, some lightning, and we see his pills going in the trash that I guess would have stopped this acid trip from happening. This ending is kind of hard to explain, honestly. You sort of have to see it to understand what the fuck is going on and what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah.
We randomly come back to Earth for little moments of interaction between Benier and Evan, but for the most part, it's just psychedelic colors, weird noises, close-up shots of Evan not knowing what the fuck is going on like the rest of us. Benier giving a crazy sermon, clips of Baby It's Cold Outside, donkeys walking backwards, opera singing, the camera shaking back and forth, Evan screaming at Benier, and that's just what I tracked over 30 seconds of this batshit insane sequence.
It's like a 5-minute long sequence, too.
Yes.
It just goes on and on and on, and you're like, what the fuck is it? What are we supposed to be getting from this?
Yeah. I mean,
It makes
just
no
utter
sense.
confusion, and that's maybe that has to be the point. That's all I can get out of it. Is like, he just wanted you to feel the absolute, complete mental collapse that Evan is going through, and that's one way to do it. Is just completely do this, blindside you with this ending that's not an ending, and then just end the film.
Utter nonsense. That makes no fucking sense. Yeah. Well, then it just kind of glitches out with a bunch of random colors and crazy noises, like someone sat on the keyboard and the computer vomited out a bunch of digital noises for like a minute straight, while an Islamic prayer plays over some random ass clips until it just fades to black. Then we see Evan's grave in Arlington Cemetery. Yep, that's how it ends. No resolution, just this weird ass psychedelic nonsense with the final lines of Hurt by Nine Inch Nails playing in the background, which kind of, I guess, fit a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, it was just weird colors and screaming that started during the middle of a scene. It just kept going until we all felt like killing our own selves, right? It was like if 2001 A Space Odyssey was directed by, well, fucking Paul Schrader. The end. That's it. There's no fucking resolution to this whole thing. It just scrambles your brain and then ends.
Okay, let's just jump straight into the questions, okay?
We have a Coppola questions before we move on.
I have a lot here. Okay, so what in the fucking hell was that? Like, how the fuck do you end the fucking movie that way? What the fuck was that? We were in the middle of a scene and it just started glitching out, and then
Not
it just
the
got
scene,
weird,
the climax
marbly. Like,
of the film.
yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Right. This
like-
was supposed to be the climax.
I know that this was like his own personal cut, but like you didn't fucking end the movie. What the fuck was that? Was Evan dying? Is that what we're supposed to assume? Is he just
Kinda what I
died in that
feel.
scene?
And we all saw it because
We
it
saw
through
what
his-
he saw while he was dying, and at one point
guess this is-
we hear some screaming and like we hear Benir like yelling. So I'm like, well, did Benir like get on top of him and choke him to death or something in that scene?
I thought
and
that was him remembering the torture scene, and Benir was yelling at him from that.
So
guess
Benir's
this
just
is-
like watching this dude tweak out in front of him. That like,
Maybe it's cold outside.
What's,
Well, that's the thing. So
what's going on?
It was completely, almost incoherent in the studio cut. We tracked it back and forth between it, where it's like, you know, they talk about how Benir's father knew some guy who came to the United States in the 40s and saw that it was a land of like decadence and hedonism, and he hated it, and that created this whole like the Islamic Brotherhood or the Muslim Brotherhood, this fundamentalist
some sort of-
extremist group, and like they talk about how like Benir's the extension of that. Like he's written about how the United States sees itself as a religion, and then that's no different than them being fundamentalists who fight with their fight, and then. They have this back and forth where Evan is sort of losing it, but also like trying to defend his values and talk about how
and still lucid
It's all
enough
lost.
to interact
Yeah,
with
and-
Benir.
in this version, all that's lost. There's clips of them talking about it, but there's no context for it, so you have no idea what the hell they're talking about. Like that's the resolution of the original movie, is explaining, you know, this coming together of these two guys, you know, and I think that's where I was getting at, where I think in that cut, at least, it was like Schrader was trying to paint this picture of like they're representations of each other's organization. You got this, you've got Benir representing fundamentalist extremist Islam, and they've got this disease of the blood that's killing them, and they'll never get over it. There's no cure for it. You know, basically they're just self-destructive and terrible. And then you've got Evan, who's a representation of the CIA or the United States or whatever, who's dying from a brain disease and is completely obsessed with tracking these people down, even though it has nothing, solves nothing in the grander scheme of things. And there was this, at least this message you could formulate from the studio cut that this was what they was trying to portray or something. But in this one, that doesn't exist because it's just this jumbled mess of them talking and blah, 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 and then it just turns into mush, and then the movie ends.
Reminded me of The Lost Highway. I don't know if you guys ever seen that, but that just kind of makes no sense towards the end. And like you can dig into it further and try and figure it out, but really it's just like some wacky visuals and a highway and like a guy's face distorting and weird, and then the movie ends and you're just like, what in the fuck was that about? But this is like, this is to that, to an extreme where it's just like, what in the goddamn hell were we supposed to get from that fucking ending? Did he just not have access to the other footage? Is that what actually happened here?
He had to, though, because he pulled shit off of the original DVD. I mean, the original film.
He did.
But it's just like, this feels like a high school film class ending. Like, well, we don't have any money. We don't have anything we can really do. So let's just throw some weird fucking music with some weird graphics.
We'll put something weird in that you have to interpret as an art piece of some sort.
I mean, on its own, as an art piece, as a standalone scene, trying to portray on film somebody dying of a brain aneurysm or a complete mental breakdown of their brain or mush has some merit to it, I think. Like, it's unique. It gets you thinking or seeing something that you're not likely to experience in your own life. But as the climax to, generally, but as the climax to an hour and a half leading up to it or whatever of a film, we're expecting some kind of resolution or payoff. It's not an ending to that. It's just like the movie basically ends when they land in Mombasa, essentially. Is what it's saying.
Yeah, pretty much.
The movie ends after Act 2.
Yeah, I think
there's no real ending to it.
If they had gone from that to Milton finding him wandering the streets of Mombasa, just completely detached from reality, it would have been a more it would have been, I think it would have been a little more impactful. Like he leaves. We can interpret whether he killed Banir or not. Probably not, because this dude is full on fucking gone. Yeah. And then I could like cut to his grave. I don't know, but like I think
either his grave or him like in the hospital where John Rambo was,
to Rambo,
like just showing that's where he ended up, and we just kind of assume what happened one way or the other.
I think if you would have cut to him in the car with Milton, that scene that was in the studio cut, and then he says, I would like to have seen him walk out and we know Banir is still alive, but then him say, oh, you should have heard him scream. It was so worth it,
Like he's
and
just
then
completely gone.
Then he just
complete mental
that's not really what I'm thinking. Is like he realized that this was not worth it, and that he had just done all this for nothing, and then he gets in the car with Milton and they drive away. We fade to black, and then it cuts to his grave. That would have made much more sense to me. Of like, okay, well, he realized that this was a fool errand at the last moment. When he finally confronted his arch nemesis, he realized, oh, this guy's dying. I'm dying. What the fuck are we even doing this for?
Yeah, we're both just spouting nonsense and
and it also would have echoed what you were saying of like the disease of the brain is the American disease of like going over here and killing all these people for no reason, really, and pointless exercise, and then
or even
the disease of the blood, from
It's not even, maybe if it's not no reason, but it's like just as retribution for what these other people are doing, which again solves nothing. It's just retribution for the sake of it.
This is like his take on
just
revenge.
Cycle.
Revenge is an endless loop.
Yeah,
it's just endless. You never really get real satisfaction or justice from revenge. It just keeps repeating itself because it's going to lead to more. It's going to lead to another incident that you have to then go avenge, and it's never ending. I can see that, but it all falls flat because he fucking ends the film in the middle of a 9 Inch Nails music video.
So is it about that, or is it about this guy dying of dementia, or literally dying on screen as we watch it through his eyes or something? Who knows?
I will say I kind of hated the way that they did the other one, where it's like he let Banir go, and then Banir's guys come after him. So it's like, okay, well, the whole time we've been kind of painting Banir as being, kind of not the person he was at that point, and he realizes that he's lost the faith in his, crazy thing as well.
Yeah, I forgot about that. He says that. That was when I was a believer or whatever.
I used to be a believer, and then Evan also says that about the CIA. I was a believer then. Yeah. But then he sends his goons after him anyway and kills a bunch of tourists.
Yeah. It just ruins that whole. It just ruins that whole resolution of these are two guys who are broken, and they both admit they don't believe in what they used to believe in, and they wasted their lives.
And they did a bunch of terrible shit for no reason.
Yep. They wasted their lives because of those causes that they were chasing after.
I feel like one good rewrite by somebody not named Paul Schrader probably would have fixed this whole thing. You know, maybe some script doctors come in, but you know, it was a low budget movie and it was Paul Schrader's art piece that he wanted to make. And he wanted to make an Oliver Stone movie for whatever reason that was just failed at everything that Oliver Stone is great at. And then ended it like David Lynch. Yeah, but at least David Lynch has a point when he ends a movie like that, you know? I mean, I think that he was trying to go for a deeper meaning, and I think he was also trying to like show Evan dying to us in a way. But at the same time, it's like, what was the point of the 75 minutes that we watched if it's going to end like that? What the fuck?
You feel cheated. You feel cheated as an audience member.
I was genuinely enjoying the movie until
same.
That happened. I was like, this is a much better film than Dying of the Light was. And then that happened, and I just turned on the movie immediately. I was just like, fuck this movie.
I think it really is the worst ending I've ever seen in a film. You know, and I haven't seen a ton of them. I mean, I watched the movies, but I haven't seen a whole bunch of, you know. I'm sure there's tons of movies I haven't seen that have worse endings, but this, for me, is possibly the worst. I mean, I as of right now, I'm saying it's the worst ending I've ever seen in a movie.
Same.
Like I guess the only way it could have ended worse is if he like walked in to see Benir and then the movie literally just ended, like Sopranos style or something, you know.
And then we see his grave.
Like, you don't even get this thought provoking, you know, whatever the hell's going on. But
yeah, exactly.
I'm so glad we're done with this. These two movies. I'm so glad that this is over.
I just want to say, like to Paul Schrader, do you think it made any difference? What you did, do you think it made any difference?
Touche.
You know, you had your movie ripped away from you and then you made this cut. Do you think it had any effect or meant anything?
Touche.
This was not a small endeavor. He had to have a guy come in and recut this entire movie with his supervision. He obviously had been thinking about Dying of the Light nonstop to the point where he was like, I have to get this out for historical record. I have to get this out. So he contemplated this for 3 years because the movie was filmed in 2013, came out in 2014. He hated the cut that the studio did, and he didn't come out with this version until 2017, this was cut after Dog Eat Dog, by the way.
It makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense.
I would have liked how they died in a jumbled mess in Dog Eat Dog with colors and stuff. I'll do that again.
The ending of Dog Eat Dog wasn't confusing enough. I need something else. I want to chase that high of confusion.
So it's almost semi-autobiographical then. If like Paul Schrader is Evan chasing down the final cut of this movie just to get it out there. You can't let it go when even the studio was like, you know, nope, we're taking this away. You're done. Like, this isn't your problem anymore. Don't worry about it. Go off into the sunset and forget about it. And he's still obsessed over it for 3 more years and came out with this cut that just
was pointless.
Okay.
Yeah. Which I guess was Evan's whole mission. I guess that makes sense. That's the best explanation I've ever heard.
All right. Finally done with Dying of the Light. Time to get cracking on Face Off. Maybe just a quick minute on YouTube or 2. Look at this. Ever since I started researching our Dying of the Light episode, I've been getting ads for this Dying Light 2 game. I mean, I'm sure it's a great game, and it's probably easily a better story than Dying of the Light, but do they really think that I'm going to buy this game just because I did a few hundred Google searches for a terrible Paul Schrader film with a nearly identical name? If only I'd used Surfshark to mask my IP, I could have avoided being tracked. With Surfshark, you can pick a different location every time you open your browser, so advertisers can't follow you around like the creepy little stalkers that they are. I'm not gonna buy Dying Light 2 so they can get their ads off of my YouTube channel already. Though it does look kind of cool. Secure your digital life today by heading over to surfshark.deals/onecagepod and make sure to enter our promo code OneCagePod to save 83% and get 3 extra months for free to protect yourself from nosy advertisers. Yeah, so it turns out Dying Light 2 is way better than Dying of the Light. Oh, kicked your ass off a cliff? Maybe I wouldn't have to do that if you had values.
Well, this was a real pile of shit. Let's rank this film on the Cageometer.
Okay, let's get to the ratings. Well, we said we're not gonna do the trackers on this thing because this is not a real movie. I'm not even gonna add anything in the background of our breakdown thing for this movie specifically because it's not even a real fucking movie. You can't even call this a movie after that ending. Like it's not even. Anyways, with that, let's get to the ratings. Vince. Where does Dark, the Dying of the Light, Paul Schrader recut, rate on your Cageometer?
Oh, God, fuck. Okay, because of how awful the ending is, I'm going to remove that part from my decision making because like you just said, I felt like up until that ending, it's a much better film, paced way better character development. He cut out all the garbage that didn't need to be in there. So I would say that I'll give this one a 5. If I included the ending, it would be a 2 because I feel like he wasted everything by that ending. But I want to be fair because I feel like up until then he did a much better job. I just wish he would have. I wish he would have done things the way that we kind of already hashed out. So I'll go back into it. Cage, I'll give Cage a 5 as well because this edit made his decisions and his choices on the performance actually make sense. We got rid of all the horrible over the top shit by Schrader cutting it as quiet clips instead of it being in your face, like that scene in particular, that scene where he freaks out in his office when they're kicking him out of the building. So glad they did that.
You can almost kind of infer that maybe some of that was in his head. When he's telling fuck you in the office and stuff. Yeah. And like him freaking out in his office, you could kind of play that off as like this is just what is going on in his mind while he's being confronted about this stuff.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
All that stuff was cut a lot better and it made his decisions make sense and played a lot better in this cut. So I think if this is how it had originally been done, I would have given him a 5 on Dying of the Light, but because of the way they cut it, it just was goofy and over the top and unnecessary. So, 5 for the movie, minus the ending, 5 for Cage. He didn't knock it out of the park, but his decision making and the way that it was cut lended a little more like emotional impact on me this time around than it did the first time.
Yeah. Nigel, where does Dark rate on your Cageometer?
Well, I'll reverse it. I'll start with my Cage rating, which I'm not going to change. It's still going to be a 5 out of 10 because I felt like his performance is the same either way, right? Like it was him. The movie may have contextualized it differently, but I still felt like his performance was good enough in portraying a guy with dementia and stuff to just rate about the same. I don't think it changed anymore. Like they didn't have Paul Schrader reshoot scenes with him to make a different performance. So I'm just going to leave that as what it is. It's 5 out of 10. Middle of the road, pretty good. Not terrible. The movie itself, like you guys said, I was enjoying it more than the Dying of the Light cut. Setting aside the weird CRT vision stuff and some of the editing, like I know that he didn't have access to a full suite of editing stuff, so I tried to imagine like, okay, if this was cleaned up and looked better, like looked studio quality, then this would probably be a better cut than what it had. But
and if it was scored specifically for this film, if the sound design would have been done specifically for this cut.
So I think everything leading up to the third act was much better, a much better movie. But because of that third act, I'm not going to divorce that from it while giving this its final rating. And I'm also, it's the worst ending I've ever seen. If the movie had been worse than Dying of the Light, and again, it's kind of hard because we're comparing it to Dying in the Light, which if you're trying to watch this by itself without knowing the context of Dying in the Light, I think I would have given it a worse score because the ending makes no sense unless you have it. At least it makes some certain amount of sense to me because we have the context of what was happening in the original story.
Right.
But without that, it would have been completely incomprehensible. Like their conversation with each other wouldn't have been understandable and stuff. But enough beating around the bush. I'll give it a 2 out of 10 as well. I would give it a 1 out of 10 if the movie had been worse than Dying of the Light up until that point. If I thought it had been worse, it would have been the lowest score that I could give a movie on this show. But because I enjoyed everything leading up to the finale, I'm giving it a higher score. But because the finale was so terrible, I have to drop it down to like 2 out of 10 overall. Just watch Dying of the Light. Like if you're gonna watch either of these two, watch Dying of the Light. I think you'll get more of what I think the intent was behind the story than if you just watch this and are just left with nothing at the end.
Essentially, But I guess that's what Evan was left with, was nothing.
Maybe that's the true intent. I just feel like there's a stronger message in the original cut of like, the United States foreign policy versus fundamentalism and how they interact with each other and how it's ultimately pointless for both sides like that. Do you think it made any difference? What you did, like that could be applied to both of them. Like, Benir killed a bunch of people and ended up as a sick, lonely man dying in an apartment and didn't further his cause or anything. And Evan trying to take revenge on him basically wasted his life and ended up dying, a broken old man. So it made no difference either way. So
there was that kind of poignant thing where Benir like turns it back on him. Is like, did you think that it made any difference?
Yes.
Because
like we're going around in circles here accusing each other of this shit when it applies to both of us. You don't even have that. You have that line, I think, but it doesn't have the same amount of meaning because it's all jumbled mess of colors and crap, and you don't know what the fuck's happening, and you can't follow what they're talking or what they're even saying to each other. And honestly, without subtitles, I wouldn't have known what they were saying to each other half the time if I didn't already know because we watched Dying of the Light, so I knew what their lines were. But it was because of the distortion and the way things were cut, it was just complete nonsense. I don't want to say Paul Schrader ruined his own movie because maybe this is what he really wanted out of it, but I feel like this ruined a serviceable movie,
Yeah. Okay. So on my Cageometer, I'm also not going to divorce that ending. That ending fucking ruined the movie. It was going really great. Like I was actually pretty impressed with the cut up to that point. And, the whole time up to this point, I was like, God, I'm going to have to probably give this at least a 5. It's a pretty solid put together, despite Paul Schrader's, lack of access to footage and the bad sound and the needle drop of other soundtracks from other movies and stuff. It was pretty well done. And I thought there was a lot more emotional weight. There was a lot more character development. There was a lot more kind of like, I had more empathy towards Evan and Benir. I had more empathy towards both of them. Like, I can see both sides here of like, you're kind of you're looking at Evan as he's a hero and he's highly decorated, but he basically, killed people too. And that was like, that's where you kind of compare these two guys of like, okay, which one is really the bad guy in this? And them cutting out the stuff where like he tried to kill one of his henchmen for not knowing where a seam was or whatever that was about in the original cut. And then the ending that was tacked on to this version in the Dying of the Light version. Kind of made, obviously Benir is actually, the worst of the two, and Evan was justified for going back and killing him. But the fucking ending just ruined everything. It just makes no sense, and I don't even know what the fuck I'm supposed to get from that. Like we said, it's just nonsense, and it's just garbage. It doesn't like we all said, like if you would have just watched this and not watched the other version, you wouldn't know what the fuck was going on in that last scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So ultimately I'm going to give it a 3, which is what I gave Dying of the Light. Because I have to balance out the movie was much better. So I have a 5 until the last 5 minutes of the movie. And then the ending was so fucking bad that it turned it back into a 3. So did he improve on this thing? Did what you make any difference, Paul Schrader? I will say, jumping over to Cage, it did make a difference in my perception of Cage's performance. I gave him a 4 out of 10 for this version because of the way that it was cut. I just feel like he comes off as a much more sympathetic character, aside from the over-the-top racism things, which didn't feel necessary to put back into the film. Just Paul Schrader being Paul Schrader, I guess. But I do feel like he gave a better performance, which that's very telling of like the edit can really change the feel of a film and the way that a performance is perceived by the audience. I mean, you got to kind of wonder if maybe some of these Cage performances that everybody's lambasting and thinking are absolutely terrible, especially the ones that have been done by more amateur directors, does the onus fall on Nic Cage, or does it fall on the editor, the director? Who's responsible for this terrible performance? Because in this one, I felt him slipping, and I saw him as a guy who kind of was this highly decorated, highly respected person in the CIA who was losing everything, and I felt for him through this. In the other one, I couldn't give 2 shits about his character. From the moment he jumped on screen the first time to the moment he died, I couldn't give a fuck about him. In this one, I actually genuinely cared. Anyway, so I do feel like this edit resurrected Cage's performance a little bit in my mind. I know Nigel, you felt like you saw that performance in the other version. Yeah. Which I get. I did see this performance in that movie too, but I also felt like there were too many cagey, over-the-top things that were fixed by the weird dementia episodes. So the weird Oliver Stone style filming actually made me like his performance better in a weird way. So yeah, not a very high rating for this film overall. From us, and I'm guessing from the audience in general.
Yeah,
not
whoever's watched this movie.
Yeah, I wonder how many people have actually seen this cut.
We just spent 3 hours talking about a cut that was only released to BitTorrent, was 74 minutes long, and just fucking ended out of nowhere in the middle of a scene.
Maybe we can all sympathize with Evan then. Talk about a fool's errand. It's ultimately pointless.
Ultimately, yeah. That's it for this episode of One Cage at a Time. As always, be sure to drop us an email at onecagepodcast@gmail.com to let us know if we missed anything or hit us up with suggestions to improve the show, compliments, comments, or simply to gush about the legend that is Paul Schrader. Next, we'll be watching the legendary 1997 John Woo action thriller Face Off. After an absolute lunatic terrorist Castor Troy, played by Nicolas Cage, gets into a plane crash, an FBI agent named Archer, played by the one and only John Travolta, decides to have Troy's face surgically removed so he can pose as him in his place. But wouldn't you know it, when Troy wakes up from his coma, he takes Archer's face and does the same thing. A premise so incredibly ridiculous and stupid that John Woo laughed his way to the bank with $245.7 million, and even more incredibly scored a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. You could not come up with a more ludicrous idea for a movie, and yet
Hollywood was way different back then.
92%. I mean, Rotten Tomatoes didn't exist, but that's based on the ratings,
The critics back then.
giving it like I think it has to be a 6 out of 10 in order to give it.
So an overwhelmingly positive.
92% of the
reviews
people
across
who
the
reviewed this gave it a 6 or higher, which is fucking crazy, dude.
Love it, dude.
Anyways, make sure to check it out wherever fine films are sold or on your streaming service of choice. Until then, we'll say goodbye the way we do every single episode with our Nicolas Cage quote of the film. I'm so sorry to play this. I'm so sorry, but I have to.
Why me? Why the fuck me? I didn't do anything wrong. Wasn't like I was butt-fucking chimpanzee asshole in the Congo and I invented AIDS.
Thanks for listening to One Cage at a Time. Visit us online at onecageatatime.com or follow us on the social media platform of your choice for more Nicolas Cage goodness. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you really like the show, become a member of our Patreon where you can download unedited and ad-free episodes as well as listen to our follow-up show, Back Into the Cage, where we re-examine each movie to discuss what we missed the first time around, answer listener questions, and wax poetic about the man, the myth, the legend that is Nicolas Cage. Push.